for, it's not Janet anymore, it's the other one.
JL.
JL properties, right. And so again, some personnel expenses to manage that operation and then payback agreements on previous developments. The bulk of the money that comes in that project area will be added to reserve in that area, in that fund. And then in the community development area, that's the one where we have a payback agreement with RC Lilly's for the building over there where they constructed their new facility. So, and that's approximately the anticipated tax increment revenue that will come in, and the agreement is to pay that back to them. I think it's 90% or 95. So those are the.
A quick question for you. The payback agreement with Young Automotive Group. Is it on us to bill for that, or do they have to report, and how does that relationship work? Because there was employment and some other things that they agreed to do.
There was an initial payment to them, then there's one that's based on, and I think that one was based on pulling a permit. Chad can correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
The initial one's based on them pulling a permit, and then the second one is based on the building actually being built and open, doing business, more or less, and then they'll start generating increment. So these first two payments are coming out of reserve from the RDA towards a project within the area, and it was decided by the RDA board that that would be fine. We'd set that aside for this type of project. But then once they start generating increment, then once we get it, we pass it over based on the agreement. So they don't necessarily have to send us an invoice or anything like that.
The other part of that was there was them hiring a certain amount of people. That's part of that as well.
Yeah, all
They
based on.
report that, or how does that reporting work?
Yeah, they'll have to give us something just to show that they met those. It's going to be easily met, but with their plans. But yeah.
So Lon, who manages this in Chad's department, he keeps track of all that and contacts all of these different entities that we have payback agreements with and make sure that they're fulfilling those type of requirements. RC Lilly had a similar one with the county actually, when that there was some money available as long as they employed a certain number of people and so forth. So.
Thanks, Tracy.
So that's what I have. Yep. So now we're good to open the public hearing.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, you're welcome to ask them. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to go into the public hearing. Open up any public comments.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted me to make a public comment. I know.
No.
Why?
Not you.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we are now in a public comment mode. So, I mean, if there's anybody in the room that wish to comment regarding our RDA funding, our budget that was proposed, you're welcome to at this time. Okay, seeing that there's none, this meeting, we will not take any action on this. However, I do need a motion to continue the hearing and leave it open until July 6th.
You don't have
or June
to.
16th?
You can close it if you want. You don't have to leave it open.
Okay, no problem.
So if you don't feel like there will be any additional public comment, you can close it, and next time we'll just address the resolution.
Okay, I'm good with that. So with that, council, I'll make a motion to close our public hearing.
Make a motion that we close this public meeting.
Okay, there you go. Second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, there we go. We have everything approved now. Okay, so that really concludes our RDA meeting. And I need a motion to come out of RDA and do regular council, right? So I need some action here, guys. Somebody make a motion.
Make a motion that we come out of our RDA meeting and return to our work meeting. Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll now go on to our regular scheduled city council work meeting. And we've got a few items on the agenda here. We typically start out though with all of our council return and reports, so, council, do you have anything you want to share on this starting your
This
committees?
isn't coming up.
Oh,
If you
okay.
could wait just 1 minute.
We'll wait for our
Thanks.
audio to be included. Sorry.
That's right.
No, you're just fine.
Where's that?
Okay.
You good? Okay. Do I need
I
to
know
restate
that.
that we're in this, we are now in our Lake City work meeting for June 2nd. And this meeting is starting at 5:39. So council, as customary, we report back on any of our committees. Do any of you have anything we need to share with one another regarding your various committees?
Just, oh, go ahead.
I don't have anything further, but I have a couple of questions. So.
The Layton Youth Council, who put that together? Anyway, the Layton Youth Council, Layton City, that's it, Layton City Youth Council. They're up cleaning up the photographer canyon, I don't know what to call it.
Great game.
Yeah.
Photo Alley.
It was fairly clean. It wasn't as bad as some thought it might be, but it was, no, and it looked like people are,
Being respectful.
doing the right things. The parts that were sectioned off weren't trampled down.
Good.
And you can see footprints literally if they walk through it, so it looked pretty good.
So my daughter was up there a couple days ago, and they weren't taking pictures where it was roped off, but right after the rope.
Oh, yeah.
So right next to it, right? Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
but maybe we need to turn, I gotta be careful. I was gonna say, maybe they might see the cougar. Or hear the cougar, that might change where they set up. Well, I know that there's
Right
that
now,
today too.
Right now, it's a runaway coyote. We don't have the cougar sighting yet, but
Oh,
somebody was down there, one of the parks guys, and said, better be careful, there's a coyote around here. And I
oh,
thought,
all right.
whatever.
Well, that's good. So, that's good. I think we got a great youth council that's really engaged and doing a lot of good things for our city, so I definitely want to keep them involved and make sure they're all invited to pass out popsicles, so.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, okay.
They're gonna put a old car in the parade. I had to talk to them about parade rules and how they could do it, but they're gonna help do the popsicles. So
Good.
Yeah.
That means all of them must be.
there's about, you probably get about 12 to 15, which is, it's nice. They're good kids.
They are. Okay, anyone else?
I just have a couple of questions. I don't know when's the best time to bring this up, but regarding the public hearing that we'll have this evening for the water, just some comments that I've seen and, things that people have said. I'm wondering how we can go about addressing some of that. I know we don't do the back and forth, but things that are not necessarily factual. I think it's helpful for the public and for our residents that we address some of the concerns that they're broadcasting that may not be accurate. I know we talked a little while back about neighboring cities and rates and things of that nature. We have that information. I know it's not necessarily ours to give out, but when residents are saying that we have the highest rates and we know we don't, I think those are things that we should let them know so they know we hear them and also give them the factual information. So that was one. And then the question that I brought up a couple of weeks ago about commercial and other types of land with watering, when we were looking at rates. A lot of times you have residents who are looking at, these businesses, they're looking at schools, churches, all of these places that have very large grassy areas, and they see sprinklers when it's raining and things of that nature. So I wonder if we have data that can give us information on how much, what's the difference between those square footages and the water usage for residential areas of the same size or space as like a commercial location, because I think that's another concern that might come up tonight with, these rates we're looking at rates residential, but what are we doing, you know, for the others? And so those are just some things that I think we can get ahead of. And if we do that, then it lets the residents know that we listen, we're hearing them, and then also we're able to kind of combat some of that, you know, false information up front. And so those are just some concerns I have.
We're actually, I'm gonna shuffle the deck here, we're gonna change the budget item to the end. So we'll talk about the rezone first, but the purpose of that is so that we kind of go through somewhat of a dry run, because the staff here has prepared a deck and information to help educate. So we need to kind of say, okay, is this what we want? Do you guys have any more tweaks to it, or suggest that they bring something else when we go out and to a regular public hearing? So that'll take place. We don't really, we do have the commercial rates that we can address and how those have been impacted, but as far as the actual square footage and comparison, I don't think they're prepared on that. But okay. Anyone else? Okay, if not, let's know that we've got two presentations here tonight. We've got one which I'm going to go ahead and stick to this order. We'll start off with, here's Johnny. I was dying to do that earlier. With the presentation from the 9/11 Memorial Project, and we're happy to have Jenny Taylor here with us as well. So I know you guys will probably tag team this, but you want to go ahead and take the round now and tell us about your project.
Okay, well, we'll first introduce ourselves. My name is Jenny Taylor, and I run the Major Brent Taylor Foundation. My husband was Major Brent Taylor. He served as the mayor of North Ogden for 4 years. He's on the council for that, and then he was killed in action in Afghanistan a few years ago. So last year, as the 20th anniversary of 9/11 came around, we decided we should do something, and we didn't know what it would be, but it turned out awesome. And we did it. We said it's once, we're done, 20th anniversary, we're going home. And then we decided maybe not. So this year will be the 21st anniversary of 9/11. And Johnny Ferry, I'll let him introduce himself and kind of the project, but we're really excited. We're bringing this event to Davis County. Last year we did it in Weber. You'll notice the way that I remember kind of pops out of Davis remembers. And the idea is to take what we learned and did last year that was such an amazing experience for the community, make it even better, bigger. Davis County is just bigger than we were. Huge focus on education and field trips for kids. But the biggest thing is to make it very grassroots. We want all the cities to participate. We want businesses to participate. We want church groups and scout groups and just all kinds of people who might not normally interact with one another on the day-to-day to come together for this. So it'll take place the week of September 11th, and I'll let Johnny kind of explain some of the details.
All right. I'm going to take you on a magical journey now to see what we did last year. It was an amazing event. And so far, your city has been graciously allowed us to meet at times here with different members of the county. So thank you up front for that. So let me go into this. We'll go to the next slide. Oh, you got a clicker?
Oh, wow.
I will have the power.
Just roll
Okay.
Thank you, roller, and it should go through.
All right, here we go. All right, just the details of this are, so when we put this together, we didn't just pull it together ourselves. This was put together with an effort with the 9/11 Museum back in New York. All of you remember where you were in 9/11. You remember the experiences. And some of you probably have connections to people who were either there or people who were involved with the events of 9/11 or the subsequent war on terror was involved. And so, but our goal is simply to give an opportunity of a generation that has now passed to share with the younger generation what it was that we experienced on that day and the subsequent events afterwards. So we want to honor those who were lost and affected by the 9/11 attacks, including the police, fire, military, medical personnel, first responders. And we're going to do it 3 ways. We have an indoor memorial walkthrough. We have an indoor community gathering place where booths are set up for different organizations to showcase what they can do for service in the community. And then finally, we have a touch-a-truck event out in the parking lot. So all of these details we'll share with the council, and you can go into more detail on it, but I'll just briefly cover what it is or exactly what we're doing. Oops. So this is held at Legacy Event Center. All of you have been there. This is the overview of the site. The parking is inside. We're going to utilize this facility for that the county has worked with us to get this all arranged. This will happen the week of 9/11. 9/11 is on Sunday, so it'll happen the Tuesday to Tuesday to Saturday prior to 9/11. We have, it's actually, if you can picture in your mind, the memorial walkthrough is essentially visual, which includes picture boards, TV, audio visual. It's dark lit with spotlight, and so you kind of, similar to what you would experience if you've been through the 9/11 memorial back in New York. So to get into more detail, we actually want to take you back to what the experience was like. So this is a chance for you to take that younger generation through and say, here's what, in this case, this is Weaver County, but Davis County was like, here's what Utah was going on in Utah prior to 9/11. Here's what was happening in pop culture in New York. And then the events of 9/11, the response, and I call it action. A second, I'll show you a video which will explain a little bit better here. All right, I'm assuming it'll play.
You only get one play.
Okay. Let's try this. Nope, not too far. Nope.
Let's see.
Wait, do you need the mouse?
Maybe, yeah.
You scroll over on that, push play.
Maybe while we're waiting for that to
Please.
pop up, I
Yeah,
apologize. I should have had
Up there.
the council introduce themselves so that you guys know who's who here.
Oh, hi everyone.
So, do you want to start, Bettina? and-
Sure. Bettina Smith Edmondson.
I'm Zach Watson.
I'm Morris.
Yeah, Joy Petro, and then,
Jason Roberts.
Dave Thomas.
It's nice to meet all of you. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Johnny Ferry. My family's company is Honeyville. We're a food manufacturer up in the BDO. And my involvement with Jenny's on the TA with my wife. So that's how I got into
that's how we met.
this. And when this event was put together, Jenny asked if I had any ideas, and this was just something that I helped put
And
together.
if the video doesn't work, that's okay. We know you have a lot to talk about tonight, but you can see when he says photos, he doesn't mean like a 5x7 on a frame. These are 4 feet by 8 feet. There's 20 television screens and then 30 areas of directional sound. So you walk through all the fun, you see Steve Urkel, you hear all the fun. Oh, there we go. Everything happening with the late 90s, or the late 90s is we're all afraid of Y2K. We're afraid our computers, we're all gonna die. We'll involve Davis Technical College, their construction management students help build the frames. And then we'll bring in some adult construction workers to help build them with the students on site. This is what those 4x8 frames or photos will stand on. You can see here the different cities in this case, Weaver County, and then in your case, of course, Davis County. But then as you walk through, the most impactful part is that Johnny's created this subway. So instead of just seeing photos, you kind of even walk under some. It's green lit, it's kind of dark. You walk out and then you hear 911 calls. And you hear voicemail from the airplane in Flight 93. You see the news coverage. And it is a lot. And we kind of intended it to be. This is something we don't want swept under the rug. I'm a school teacher and a PTA mom at heart, and the education piece of this is huge. We'll bring about 5,000 Davis County students on field trips, plus any homeschoolers or charter groups that want to come. There's kind of that greenlit subway. And we don't want you to leave this feeling like, that was the most awful experience of my life. Again, we want you to leave feeling like, how did you feel when you woke up September 12th that year? And the unity that came, and the Olympics that were here in Salt Lake City, and the way the children come together and they're making care packages for cops or for firefighters or for the medical professionals, or they're writing a thank you note for the same groups of people. They're interacting with an NYPD guy who was at Ground Zero when it happened and now lives in Park City. And he has a chunk of one of the planes that they let him take home because it was garbage. And they're talking with a subway worker named Hector, who actually lives right here in Davis County, who was in the subway system when it collapsed. And I never even thought of that component. I know, Mayor Petro, you have your stories. You flew and landed in Phoenix to a really eerie, empty place
the only one in the
that day. So that doesn't look like the airport I left 2 hours ago. So we want to take those local stories. We end it with kind of the high energy. We show you lots of pictures of America, lots of pictures of the monuments, your Veterans Wall, your Legacy Plaza. You're trying to fundraise. We really hope this drives a lot of energy and attention to that. The beautiful Veteran Memorial in Bountiful, Kaysville's Firefighter Monument, all these awesome things. Then you see the sheriff's car, and you play in the fire truck and the ambulance. We hope that you go home with a renewed sense of, oh yeah, we're neighbors, because we're really divided right now. And so the middle piece between that emotional boards and that super awesome parking lot, the middle piece is probably the most important. And that's the Community Resource Center, where we'll bring in all kinds of organizations in your county where people can not only see what service is happening here, but where they can sign up to be part of that service. Maybe the soup kitchen, maybe Open Doors, maybe some of the different Boys and Girls Club, Red Cross. We're working with Red Cross to hopefully have a blood drive on site. Really, so as you come away from this and you say, I remember that, and I remember I just wanted to hug you, and I just wanted to say, how are your kids? And I didn't want to fight about politics and tweets. I just wanted to be together, and that's what we're really trying to capture. So there's high energy, we want your emotions everywhere, and then we want to say, run with it. Don't go home and throw up, but run with it. You know, we want it to be this positive takeaway, and I think we were able to accomplish that last year.
Here's the schedule of events. You can see we have an opening night on that Tuesday. We have the schools that are there from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then we've got open to the public Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And what we're asking for is really two things. One, help us get the word out. Help us let the communities know what's going on. And as we put out information and put out marketing material, if you could just help to repeat that out, get it out.
And a quick side note from that, help us find people who have particularly moving stories from that day. I mean, every one of us could tell exactly, I mean, do you remember where you were? Probably, but things like the mayor, people who maybe some of you were there, maybe you know someone who was there, maybe you know someone who had a connection that might be more than, not that there's any not important connection, but you know what I mean? What we'd really like to do is showcase some of those local stories. I think it's sometimes easy for our school children and even adults to think, yeah, that happened in New York, that happened in Pennsylvania, that happened at the Pentagon, and now I read about it in history class. It really impacted a lot of Utahns. We had firefighters that went to Ground Zero for the first year helping to clean up. And let's find those people, let's capture their stories. We'd like to have some of these photo boards have, you know, here's a picture of the mayor and just a quick write-up of her personal experience. Then we take this collection, and we've been working with the historical department at Weber State University, and we've now got an archive that 100 years from now, they'll be able to say not only what happened in New York, here's how Utah was involved with New York. So that's kind of that saying, get the word out and help us find those people.
The second thing that we're looking for is there are pictures or events or things in your community that makes Layton Layton. And we need about 4 of them. We need to narrow it down to 4 pictures that tell your story. So that you get 2 boards. You get 2 boards and they'll say Layton established whatever year it was, and you'll get a chance to showcase your city in 4 pictures, or you can do one big picture of the whole community. But if you can help us find that picture, we can go in and search and find them ourselves, and then you can say, yeah, we like those. Or if you have somebody who is just really good at doing that and has pictures already, we need 4 of them.
And we need a pretty high resolution, because that's big. So it might not work from your cell phone, although maybe your cell phone works. And along with that, if you have a sentence or two, some of the cities last year chose to, you know, maybe kind of this size of a few words that we then superimpose on the photo that says, this is Layton. This is maybe our history and our heritage. And again, as the children come from all over the county, and as people come from outside of the county too, they'll be able to see, oh, this is Layton. That's the city where they have R.C. Willey and they have the Vietnam Wall or whatever you want to showcase, and be able to maybe open their eyes to some of the awesome things happening that probably are right under their face and they don't know. I said this morning that sometimes we think we need to go to Uganda and save the starving children, when in reality, there's a lot of work we could do close to home. And we want to help connect people who are willing to help, parents who want to teach their children to serve, with opportunities to serve right here in Davis County.
Okay, what's wrong with it? So we have a calendar of events where we're working with different volunteers to get everything done, and we are well on our way, and this is doing really well as far as everything related to the events and the build-up. We are working, there is cost to doing this. It's free to the public. This is free, we're doing this free, and everybody volunteering is doing it free, but we do have to pay for some of the materials and things we're putting together. And so as we work on that, we have, our goal originally was to raise the $170,000, but that included an option on exhibit boards, which we've changed, and we're gonna pivot and do what we did last year on the boards, which is a lot more economical for us. But it also gives more opportunity for volunteers to work and serve. And so actually our goal right now is to try and get about $100,000, and we're doing really well to that. If any of you know of anyone in the community businesses or people who would be interested in donating to and to also be marketed and be a sponsor of the event. That's something that we're putting out there. We're not asking the cities to be a sponsors of events, but we're.
Although I will say Clinton City did sponsor.
They did, that's
Sorry,
right.
that out, so if you want to sponsor us,
But if there's,
we'll put your money to good work.
so that's out there too. So if you know of anybody who's interested, we are calling around to different businesses in Davis County to help us out. That's it. Any questions? Please.
It said framework and build. The stuff you built at Weaver, did you keep that?
We actually donated to Habitat for Humanity.
The
There's a house
lumber,
somewhere.
the lumber we did.
The lumber?
We kept the boards, so we'll need to
Yeah.
recreate the boards of the Davis County portion and some of those things. The lumber, mostly, I didn't think we'd ever do it again, and storage. It was a logistics
Right.
question.
Okay.
We already have 2 pallets of photo boards, but the lumber would be great if we could get some, if there's a local lumber yard. Last year, Will, right up in the Weaver County area, I think they donated about half. We paid about half and they wrote it. We are a 501c3, so anyone that donates can go ahead and work with that and their tax advisor. But in-kind donations would be great. Manual labor, volunteer. It's a great opportunity to get your coworkers or your family or your scout group and come serve. We used about 400 volunteers through the week last year. It was
Usually it's
really
like a
awesome.
2-hour window. that
Take
we
a shift.
Can
Take a
you,
shift.
can you give us a breakdown of
Yes.
when you're gonna do
Yes.
this and when you're
Absolutely.
gonna?
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
we'll
we
send
get
that
volunteers.
to you and then you can
Okay.
break it out. We'll have an online sign-up platform where people can view all the opportunities.
Okay.
But we can also
that's
send you kind of an at a glance, here's an overview. Some companies last year chose to come 30 people at a time and just fill an entire shift as a group, as a team.
Awesome experience here. Any other questions?
One off the subject. Where's your flag on July 4th?
It is, how big a flag do you want? We've got it.
Well,
it'll be in,
the one that's huge.
Is your road wide enough? If your road's wide enough, you can have it, because our flag
We
is
used
going
to
to
people back.
Far
Yeah,
West.
A couple of trucks.
We've got Far West and North Ogden City that morning, but both of them have their parade on auxiliary roads. And so we use the flag we call a lieutenant.
Oh.
It's 30 feet by 60 feet, so the 78 by 150 is still in the box. We're good. If your road's wide enough,
78.
you're bigger than we
I
are.
think
Washington
Wasatch-
Boulevard in North Ogden
Wasatch
barely
Drive might
holds it.
What's that?
No other
I
street.
can look at the size, what did you say it was?
78 by 150.
No other street in North Ogden will hold up beside Washington Boulevard.
What about
Okay.
timing, as far as, what time does the parade start up there?
Well, we
They're
could
not
give you a flag
using
we're not using.
They're not using.
Yeah,
it.
well,
So
then
we
you need
would
a-
need to find the folks to carry it.
You need 150 people to carry it, but it's never been hard to find people to carry it. We have a Google form we let you send out to people and people who are coming to the parade anyway. It's an experience, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I remember-
Usually we like t-shirts, we might have to hustle and get some t-shirts made.
I remember when they did, I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw you
Yeah.
and asked you.
We took it
just
down.
ask.
Well, and you guys showed up at, we got, if that was the lieutenant, I don't know, what did we use for the Vietnam Veteran Parade, because you were here for them?
That was a lieutenant. Yeah. But that was because you were more on side streets, right?
Yeah, that
Like,
was
you're
the
not
side
down
street
in Main.
one, yeah.
So if you're familiar with the Ogden area, Washington Boulevard's kind of it. That's the biggest we get. And in the North Ogden area, it isn't
Narrows
that
it
big.
down, yeah.
For whatever reason, in 2019, we were on Washington and we used it. 2020, we had no parade, of course. Last year, they moved it to an auxiliary road and they're leaving it on an auxiliary. So we have two 30 by
Okay.
60s and
We'll
one.
see.
All right, one last
It's
thing.
always
and then
available.
we'll-
I got 700 3 by 5 flags too. If you have any flags, we got flags.
So Jenny and Johnny, this is our city manager, Alex Jensen.
Oh,
Okay.
So I don't know if you had an opportunity,
Okay.
I don't know if you met him
I
last
don't
time,
know,
but
we've
you
met. Nice to meet you. All right.
Do we work with Alex on potentially on the photographs and things, or is there?
Now, what's the best point of contact? So we're not inundating the whole council.
Most
or-
likely Mattis, could we do
I think
Madison? or-
Joellen.
Joellen.
Yeah, we've been working with
Yeah,
Joellen.
Joellen's, yeah, you guys been
Yeah.
by the way.
She's great.
Yeah, she's done.
Hang on to her. She's,
Yeah, don't give me any ideas.
yeah. Oh, I wish we could. I won't say anything about my blessed city because I love it, but sometimes I wish we had some of your vision. Because I have a lot of vision. I was married to a man with a lot of vision, but not everybody has vision.
It's okay, you're gonna help us carry it forward.
Yep, we're taking it.
We'll join forces.
So first, we're going to dinner in Layton to spend our tax dollars here, and then I'll swing by RC Willie because
Yep.
I need some furniture. In the meantime, North Ogden doesn't want business, so I'll bring my tax dollars to you.
That's great. Well, thank you, you guys. We appreciate you coming back. I was here yesterday.
John is my dad.
Johnny's the 5th. His son is the 6th.
That's right.
Yeah, wow.
John, Johnny, J. Wiley, birthday.
So Rachel Terry says you have an
Yes.
Army birthday.
Oh my goodness,
softball.
by the way, second question, what are you doing June 14th in the morning? I need to build a civilian softball team to play against soldiers to celebrate the Army birthday in Salt Lake.
I already told you I'm in.
Thank you. Are you playing?
Yeah, she
Okay.
bullied
We
me
need-
into it. So.
Well, that's what we need. And you
I
don't
don't
have
wanna,
to
I
have
don't know if I
skills.
wanna
Just-
go get beat by a soldier, but I guess it's,
Well,
it's
we
the
talked
Army's
about it this
birthday,
morning.
so.
We should let them.
It's my.
It's their birthday. Yeah, it's their birthday. It'll be fun. It'll be a great celebration where soldiers all along the Wasatch Front are coming with their families.
Where are you having that?
It's called Riverside Park in the Salt Lake area. I think technically it's in Rose Park proper, but it's right near downtown. The idea is to let some of these soldiers interact outside of soldiers. And get some dignitaries and some leaders and some, we'd love to have some school board representation and things like that.
So I was actually gonna mention that in here. So
Please,
when I-
thank you.
When I looked
Playing
behind
ball.
there and you were there, I was like,
We're playing ball.
yeah,
Yeah.
talk about that. So,
Good. Yeah, and Rachel has all the details, and if anybody does want to play, or if you know, it'd be fun to have some business leaders. That's what we don't yet have. We have some political leaders, we have some schools.
There's a business leader.
If there's any business leaders that would be willing to come, I don't particularly care how you play ball. It would just be fun.
Well, thank you, you guys.
Thank
Really
you for pointing that out. I appreciate that.
Okay, I know I'm watching the clock here, but Lorene, welcome, Commissioner.
Thank
I
you.
should say Commissioner Collier.
Maureen is great.
So,
Now I can be as quick as you need me to be.
about 10 minutes max.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Let me pass these around. Yes. This is the latest. So I'm Maureen Kamali, one of the 3 Davis County Commissioners. This is my 4th year. And I live in Kaysville, so I have been your neighbor ever since 1996. Know Layton pretty well. My husband was active duty at Hill from 96 to 2000. So yeah, I think we even looked for a home in Layton. We were planning to go all the way across the Kaysville, to live closer to the base for a while. Anyway, this is a really big help to a lot of folks. It's like Tracy, you should have it, and someone over here too. It's the portfolio list. It actually shows how the county is structured, but it also shows which commissioner works most closely with what. So you can see that besides 3 elected commissioners who rotate chair and vice chair each year, and that's just to lead the meetings and to maybe be the one to sign extra documents. There are all the other elected officials with their duties and state statute. And then we have certain departments that we supervise if there's not an elected official over, elected officials have their responsibilities in state statute. But if it's a true county department, then a commissioner will supervise that department. There will be a department director, and of course, they are often tenured for years and are still the subject matter expert, more so, kind of like a city, right? But since we don't have a county manager, our form of government is a 3-member commission, then we have some of the departments that we supervise. So you'll see me in the middle, and I do a lot of health and human services and criminal justice, which is kind of unexpected. I'm not an attorney and I'm not a judge. And so it's very interesting that I've ended up forming a criminal justice coordinating council in 2019. Turns out it's a best practice. Turns out it's now law in the state of Utah as of this latest session to bring all the stakeholders together in a criminal justice system. And we've been doing that once a month for an hour ever since 2019, and it's invaluable. Then I serve on a couple of state committees, Indigent Defense Commission. So I had to be appointed by the Senate and recommended, I guess, by the governor to do that. And I chair that now, and then also a pre-trial release and supervision. You're tracking this really well. I'm jumping around just a little bit. Some of those things are down at the bottom, yeah, for the criminal justice. But I think most of you know, counties and cities are local government. And counties are considered a subdivision of the state. And a lot of the work in counties is something that the state has to have done, but they can't do it, like property tax. is a function of the county level of government, which takes like 3 different elected officials, 3 to 4 to do that. All with kind of keeping the separation of duties and all of that. So you can kind of see what we each do. A lot of the human services work is behind the scenes and we have a lot of community partners who are the nonprofit organizations, like Davis Behavioral Health is a big one. Safe Harbor Domestic Violence Shelter is another really big one. And then there are others. Davis Tech's a big partner for us. And the school district, we don't oversee the school district at all, but we do work with them in certain ways. So this helps a lot of people understand how the county is structured. The 3-member structure is the most common in the state, and it's, I think, the epitome of small government, actually. So, you may have questions about this, and maybe that's the best way to use this little group, because I can make a couple of other announcements that will be interesting for the public and still keep it pretty short.
Okay, so you're gonna do it in our regular 7.
Yeah, I think I'm on the agenda. I think that's what my staff said. Is that, could someone?
We had you on the agenda for the work meeting, but certainly,
Well, I'll just stay and watch. I could do a public comment and then
yeah.
my staff may have had that wrong.
Okay.
So, yeah, well then, let me just also mention and then handle whatever questions you have. The public open house, this has been years coming for the historic renovation of the Memorial Courthouse. And I'm sure a lot of you who grew up here have memories of going there for this or that. And
No,
then,
not at all.
and there were, for years, kind of questions.
Did the jail used to be there?
The jail used to be there.
That's why Dave remembers it. Just guessing.
DMV stuff was there, health department stuff was there. I mean,
Everything.
a lot of stuff was there. And
One-stop shop.
it was, and of course, that was the administration building until it was outgrown by this county. It's still growing tremendously. And then it also was not considered to be safe for earthquake risk. So something needed to be decided about it. And there, honestly, the public became just super interested in not taking that whole building down. And yay, that the public cared about that. And because the county cared about it too. And so this is kind of preceding our commission, but our commission has made a few big decisions that were just kind of languishing, and that's one of them. We got that going and made a bunch of decisions, and so it's ready. So you have invites as manager, mayor, and council to the VIP, which is on the evening before Thursday, June 9th. So that's a week from today, in the evening at 6. You can come to that if you would like to. And then the whole entire public is invited to this, which has a ribbon cutting ceremony at 1, and a pretty cool little ceremony for that. And then all the way up till 6, people coming and going and touring with open house. Yeah, that's a big deal. Another really big deal is the Legacy Events Center. Again, years of people trying to determine the equestrian and dirt floor uses really dropped in their scheduling at the recession. And yet it was still a very important thing for our county that there was a place for dirt floor users. And so it took a lot of figuring out, but we have partnered with Utah State Extension that's located with their property in Kaysville. They have a master plan, they have a space.
That's what I was gonna.
They have a space north of Discovery House where a new indoor arena will be built with tourism funds and an outdoor arena. And so there will be a place then that all the dirt floor users won't have to struggle to find availability, and 4-H will be there, and it will be sustained into the future with operations at the extension, which is a very appropriate place. And of course, Farmington has changed like crazy since the days of when that property was purchased long ago. It's purchased for overflow of space for if the sheriff's campus ever needed more space. That was the original reason for that. So a remodel of the indoor arena, a new building next to it, additional fields on the outside, and it will leverage tourism, which will benefit the whole county. You have hotels and restaurants that when big events come to town, they will be in your places for stuff that's gonna go on there. So that construction is supposed to start this fall. But as you know, construction is just having lots of delays. So hopefully it really will start this fall. Those are a couple of really big things.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, that I think everyone, when you get questions, you'll be able to answer, refer. But do you have anything else that has kind of been a question with your, what you
Does
see
anybody
or
have any questions
what
for
you
the
hear?
commissioner?
I don't see the Davis Conservation District on any of the committee assignments. I know Randy used to attend that. Is that not an assignment?
Davis
or-
Conservation District, yeah, I've not seen that in my time.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in a couple years before, he's midway through his second term almost. So I'm not familiar with that.
I'll check with him.
Yeah, definitely check with him.
You're a liaison for the clerk and auditor's office, and we get some questions. I've got questions about the purpose of separating those offices.
Yes.
Can you talk?
I would love to explain that. We do switch around. We don't switch around the portfolios so much. They don't switch very easily. Especially facilities and libraries, which you can see I oversee those. They're tied together because we have 7 different libraries and facilities that does a lot of work in those libraries. We do switch around human resources is with the chair. That rotates each year. And we have rotated our liaison stuff after 2 years because there's really not much that we do with it. We're just supposed to be a support. But the entire commission has been watching this for a while. Other counties split it before us, the big ones. Davis County put those together in 1989. We are so much bigger. We have seen that they're first of all not very related because auditor is finance.
Yeah.
It's finance. And the clerk has all the licenses and the elections. And both the workload of them have increased tremendously over the years, and we're not done growing. So, and you can't just split it anytime. It's in state statute when you can. It needs to be between terms. And so it needed to be taken care of by the beginning of February. And we took care of it at the beginning of January. The law in the state does not take into account the new signature gathering in SB 54. So there was a little thing about one person who started to collect signatures. She got to choose which one she wanted to use those toward. And honestly, there was more competition in the election because we chose to split it. So there's more people who are maybe going to run, maybe going to be interested in those spots. Both very important state statute rules at the county level.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and continue on. and
Yeah,
then
please
you're welcome to
continue.
stay.
I'm just going to watch and learn. We like to come around. During the pandemic, the gatherings were really limited or not being held in person. But you've seen us come around before, and we just kind of come together, but now we sometimes split up because we can cover more bases. So that's another reason I'm here, is just to be supportive to you guys and know what's going on.
Well, we appreciate it. I know you guys are good about listening and taking care of our concerns.
And any of you can reach out at any time, right? So you know that. Okay.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
And thanks
Okay,
to Tracy. He serves on he serves on the internal audit committee, which the auditor started. It hadn't been a thing. So he's in our initial group, and it's been really great to have him.
good. That's good to know. Okay, let's, so as I mentioned earlier, I was gonna switch things around, right? You're looking at me like,
Nope.
am I okay?
Just watch it.
Whoa.
Just hanging out.
Yeah, I'm just watching. Well, thank you, and I should have acknowledged your, I'm sorry.
No worries.
So, we're glad that you're able to be here to fill in, Kevin, and I know that, we've got, Gary and Steve that are down to the, convention,
Municipal attorneys.
and.
Yeah, I know I'm just a poor substitute for Gary.
No, you're not.
Steve Garside convention.
Yeah.
Indian convention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, we're gonna switch this around, so we'll go ahead and, have Chad cover our rezone, regarding, Hillfield Road.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to be very, very brief. Yeah, this is just a quick, kind of an explanation. This is an item that went to our planning commission a couple meetings ago. There was a split vote, so I want to just explain that a little bit. The property is located up on North Hillfield Road, just across from Northridge High. Here's an aerial photo with the zoning on top of it. The request is to go from CP1 to MU, that's the mixed use zone, so it's a commercial zone to a mixed use zone. there was some concern expressed by some of the commissioners about converting commercial zoning to mixed use, which allows for residential use within that zone. I want to just briefly show our general plan. This is the important discussion. We maybe didn't have as much time to talk about this as we'd hoped, the planning commission and how these relate, but our general plan looked at this area specifically. This is not an area that was, kind of an afterthought. It was one of those areas that was very, very closely scrutinized during the general plan process. What we're looking for is areas that made sense for Layton City to fulfill our portion of providing housing for the base and other places. This is an area that it checks all the boxes. It's on a major roadway. It's on a major transit route within the county. This is I think it's the 627 that goes from DATC all the way up to Weber State. Carries a pretty decent amount of transit traffic. So this is an area that, again, that checks all the boxes for that mixed use. So as part of our general plan, we anticipated that some of these underperforming commercial sites would be converted to housing, or areas that could have housing. Mixed use should still allow a commercial portion. So again, I know we've talked about this a lot with when Tyson was on the commission, just for some of our newer council members, this is an area that this meets the general plan, it checks those boxes. And one other thing I wanted to mention, we didn't get a chance to talk about this commission, but I want to make sure the council knows that we are looking at those areas that are the most viable commercial, and a lot of those you never see. We had about 2 years ago a group that wanted to rezone our Shopko, and we said, look, this is one of our commercial parcels that has freeway frontage. It just doesn't make sense to us for us to rezone this parcel to something that would allow for residential. We know things are changing in the retail world, but we still need to have these parcels available. That was, again, filled by another user eventually, but there was some pressure there. Another one is over on our site where Fresh Market is. We have a user there now, tremendous pressure for that to convert to something besides commercial. But we said, again, that's a place that makes sense for commercial. Our general plan didn't anticipate that would go to residential. So that's just, again, a brief explanation of that. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. The commission did forward a positive recommendation for this zone change. It was a little bit closer than we thought it was going to be, so I wanted to give that explanation.
Wasn't it based on exiting the property?
No, the access question came up, but the concerns that were expressed by the commission, and the access questions will all be worked out during the development review process, but the questions that were brought up were, is this a place that we want to keep as commercial so that we can capture some of the taxes that are coming off of 193, or off of the base with the south entrance there? The answer that the general plan has for that is, this is an underperforming commercial site. We've looked at that many times. This is not one of those. It's going to be that site. Many of the commissioners in their findings to approve pointed out that most of those folks are going to go further south and get to those major commercial areas before making that stop. So,
yeah, but I'm talking about if you have a separate exit, then you have to put in a retaining wall, or not retaining, but a medium, which would make anybody that wants to go to Alpha Graphics have to go way up and then turn around and come back.
Yeah, we haven't answered all the questions from UDOT on that. That's potentially, it kind of depends, but it's more, the concerns of the commission were more based on the use, so.
And even after that discussion, it was still very close. That was my note, so I'm glad that we're discussing it.
We didn't have as much of a detailed discussion as we're having right now. That's why we wanted to have this. You got a little more detail about that general plan.
The high density housing across the street, what was one, I know that's recent. What was there beforehand?
Restaurant.
A restaurant?
LaGloria.
Right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So they requested, and they actually requested our M1, right?
Yeah, this is pre-general plan, yeah.
So it was hard for me when I was reading the discussion in the planning commission to see the justification for saying no just a few years after you allowed that high density area right across the street. It's in the same area. It doesn't seem like there's really, unless there's an issue with the shared driveway.
Well, there was, because when I was in that meeting, that's what they talked about.
Yeah, so I just didn't see, especially when across the street it's the same, and then the next door neighbor, Alpha Graphics, who would be the ones who would be harmed by that, were there to say they wanted it to be. So yeah.
There was some concern raised. I don't want to say there wasn't concern raised, not trying to contradict Councilmember Thomas, but the focus of the discussion, though, this was a zone change hearing, so we weren't looking at side issues, and we did remind the commission that that would be looked at later on. It's the land use. The reasons stated by the planning commission in their findings, those that voted no, were that they were concerned about converting commercial space over to residential. So the access issues, we'll work through those with you.
Yeah,
I think, to my understanding, Alpha Graphics was in favor of the shared driveway.
Yeah, they were.
To not have that was my first concern, was
Right.
a bunch of residential traffic mixing with what's been a business.
yeah.
But it sounds like that, to my understanding, that was resolved, and I'm not opposed, and I don't believe the commissioners, at least one of the commissioners I spoke to, not opposed to converting to residential. I have a deeper concern of our with our mixed use ordinance, because I don't see it, I see it seldom turning into mixed use. And so we're converting this prime retail or commercial area into mixed use, but there's no guarantee that there's gonna be any retail or any commercial. And that's my, I feel like I have the same concern as the commissioners for that reason, and it's probably deeper than, I have no objection to the density, I think. And I think the mixed use corridor, when the general plan was adopted, was with that idea that it's going to be mixed use. It's going to be retail space on the bottom floor and high density housing up above, which I'm in favor for.
I think that might be one of the things that, and we've talked about this a lot with the commission at various times. It's been a while since we had the discussion, but the idea behind the mixed use corridor was not that we would have uses necessarily vertically mixed use. Certainly that could happen, it's allowed, but what this does is provide a corridor where you can have mixes of uses that occur even across property boundaries. So you have Alpha Graphics next door to a mixed use facility that maybe has some apartments. So that mix of uses can occur over that corridor. What we find is that those types of mixed use that are vertical are not viable on every single parcel. Areas like our downtown, that's a place where that makes a lot of sense. But sometimes when you get on some of these arterial corridors, having that type of use is not necessarily viable in those. So the idea was not necessarily to create a row of commercial on the bottom with residential on the top. It was to create an opportunity for this mix of uses to happen organically. And that's what we've seen. Those parcels that are good commercial parcels, this is actually one that is not one of those high performing commercial parcels. It's actually one that is recommended to transition for that reason. It's underperformed for years. It hasn't been one that's had a viable commercial use on it. So that's the idea. And then that's maybe a misconception about that mixed use zone. It doesn't require it to be vertical. It can be a horizontal across several property lines. So I'm taking more time than I meant to. Any other questions that you may have?
You can have an
We
opportunity
can
to
talk
ask out
more
there.
in the commission.
Right, yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Judge. Okay, let's go ahead and then proceed with Tracy. He's going to give you a little bit of detail here on the budget, the proposed budget, and possibly do a presentation on, get some feedback on, right? So I don't know how you want to juggle that.
We'll address some budget highlights initially and then transition into the water rate discussion. We suspect that's probably where most of the questions will come. And there's a pretty good feedback you've done on action and hearing from citizens more than that question. So we think we've answered most of the questions we want to more emphasize and so forth based on your interactions.
So we prepared a short presentation. We'll just buzz through it. And I'll get some of these budget ones, maybe we'll skip those at first so we can get to the water ones. But so I have a short presentation on just the budget, what that's about. We do have to talk about things that have changed from the tentative budget, and one of those is obviously the water rate increase, the 911 dispatch center project, and then some market-based wage adjustments. Those are the three things that have changed. We'd intend to go through and address some of these key points. The fact that in 2017, the Water Master Plan was adopted. There was a rate study, and part of that rate study was to have a 35% increase, a 20% increase, and a 10% increase so that we could meet the demands of the system as far as operation, maintenance, cost of projects, so forth. We'll talk about, briefly that the pandemic interrupted that plan, and now we're also facing inflation where most recently the capital projects are coming in at up to 30% over their original estimates. So all of that leads us to this situation where we need to have rate increases. We also want to have a top-rated system. It's not that we want to have a gold-plated system, it's just that we want to have a system that's safe, that provides safe water for use of people at all times, and that it's available, right? That when you turn on your faucet, it's there. There's drought concerns and the continuing conservation efforts, and those conservation efforts have also affected revenue for the system. But costs are the biggest thing, the inflation and the need to mostly the need to stay with the plan. And my intention will be to turn some time over to the city engineer, Steve, and he can walk us through some of that.
Yeah, and so for some of you who haven't maybe been involved with this master planning process, the master plan evaluation is a comprehensive evaluation of our water system that makes sure that the existing system can be maintained and sustained throughout the growth that the system has, but then also it looks at supply and demand projections as our city grows, and we've all seen the growth and we continue to see the growth here. And so one of the things we can't allow is for the system to start being negatively impacted by additional growth, because we have a commitment to provide quality drinking water to everybody that is in the system currently, and then those that come along after need to also be provided that same level of service. So we look at supply and demand, we look at the peak supply and demand projections so that everybody can use water when they need to use water. There's nothing worse than getting in the shower in the morning and going, wow, where'd all the pressure go, right? Well, we do that on a much larger scale in a system like this. And then we look at that distribution system to make sure that there's enough water to do what the system needs to do. And one of those big things is fire flow protection, as well as just everyday demands from the system. And then we work with these consultants to come up with these recommended system improvements. And also we look at the cost of those improvements and the timing of those improvements so that we can come to a logical and sustainable process to be able to implement these things. So we come up with this 10-year capital facilities plan. There's an impact fee analysis that's done to address the impacts of new growth on the system, and then the rate study was also implemented to ensure that we had a sustainable rate system that would carry us into the future. So as we look at the system, I want to point out this is a very complex system. There's very few systems in the state that are this complex. We have over 300 miles of pipe ranging from 4 to 24 inches in diameter. This is just the culinary stuff. We've got some other things with secondary now that we've taken on, but we've got 3,300 hydrants, 7,300 valves, 20,000 plus meters that we're servicing in the system throughout the place, and you can see the numbers. I won't go through them all right now, but we provide a lot of water. Last year, even with the drought, we provided over 4.1 billion gallons of water to the residents in the city. And the estimated system replacement value when this study was done is $265 million. It's something that you can't let go deteriorate and then hope that you're going to be able to put band-aids on it forever. And so not only are we looking at growth, but we're looking at replacement and upkeep of the system as we move forward. So in the 5-year capital improvement plan, we've put together kind of some categories here. You can see we've got almost $29 million worth of culinary and secondary pipeline projects that need to take place. We've got just under $3 million in storage reservoir projects, another $9.5 million in pumps and wells, and then we've got a meter installation and replacement project in these areas. You can just see those costs there. The $1.6 million in operations and equipment projects, those are operations, things like sampling stations and capital equipment that need to be purchased that are not just normal operation expenses that go throughout the budget process. So overall, in the next 5 years, we're looking at $50 million worth of projects that we project need to be completed, and we want to continue moving those along and making sure that the water is available, whether it's culinary or the secondary, for the future.
Go ahead, Dave.
Is that today's prices?
Yeah, those are today's
Okay.
prices.
I mean, we're not figuring in inflation or anything.
There is the inflation that's there, but we're not projecting,
But you're not predicting more?
we're not projecting a 20%
Yeah, okay.
inflation every year for the next 5
You're
years.
saying if I did it today, this is what's gonna cost me?
Yeah,
Secondary metering,
that's
is
part
that,
of
was that
that.
7 million?
That's
Is
part
that
of that
with
7
the,
million.
hopefully the grant?
Yeah,
after the
we're
grant?
hoping the grant will get that cut down quite a bit for us, but if it doesn't happen, then we are on the hook to pay that amount.
That's the worst case, that's.
That's worst case.
We don't need that.
So with the grant, it'll get you down to that 40
The grant would
million roughly?
be, the grant would be 5 million of that 7.1.
Yeah.
But we won't know until later in August whether or not we get that. We're gonna assume we do, but. Go ahead.
Tyson had a question.
Well, I was gonna ask the same question, just making sure that's proposed for the grant money. I
Yeah.
was in a water meeting yesterday and Candace, I can't remember her name, but she's Division of Water Rights. She said the first round of applications was 211 million, I think, out of the 250 million.
Yeah,
So
everybody that's,
it's not gonna cover what they
everybody that
don't.
could apply should have been applying to us. And we're in that, we've received a confirmation that we're in that first group that they're gonna consider in April, or excuse me, August. April's already passed, we're in August. So. We've had a lot of questions. I think maybe some of the comments you've received is, well, everybody in agriculture is using all the water, why can't we just get them to cut back? And the truth is, there is a large amount of water that's used for agriculture in the state. This is from the Utah Rivers Council. 85% of the water is agricultural water, with 15% being the municipal and industrial water that is there. And of that municipal and industrial water, you can see it's about a 75-25 split for the indoor-outdoor water. One of the things I do have to point out is that water right laws in Utah are very clear that it's first in time, first in right, and most of the agricultural users own their water rights and they are priority shareholders. And so you can't just come in and say, hey, you're an ag user, I want your water. That doesn't work that way, but what we do have is a lot of ag conversion to M&I water, which is where a development will come in and water that's being used on the ground as agricultural water is then converted to this municipal industrial conversion. And that's where that 15%, you start to see that grow as the communities switch from being an agricultural community to an urbanized community. So there's a lot of questions that, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have to stand up for agriculture. And Joy's the water, she owns water also, and I'll say agriculture's been cut back for 3 years in a row now. We were cut back by 40% 3 years ago. And there was no restrictions or recommendations on outdoor watering of residential. So
Yeah.
to say agriculture isn't cut back is,
No, and
and I know you don't believe that, but it's the perception.
yeah, and thank you for that, because everybody is being cut, and the agricultural users are being cut in some cases much more severely because it's their livelihood, and so, some of them are having to operate their agricultural systems differently to be able to produce crops and things like that.
Well, you talked about the financial impact. I mean, most of them were set up for the water flow that we had 5-10 years ago, and to only get 40% of that stuff to work.
Just for fun, what costs more, ag or residential?
What costs?
To water an acre?
Well, so
You know what I mean?
typically, and that's on this slide here, typically the agricultural users are using more water on the ground because they're using all of the ground, if that makes sense. So residential developments will use less water than an agricultural system because they're not watering the full amount of the outdoor use. The indoor use is only 25% of that. So we find that a lot of times residential developments will come in and use less water than what the agricultural flood irrigation needs on the ground, but
the cost to deliver that water is much greater.
Yeah, Flood irrigation is ditches and things, but the cost to deliver the residential water is through pipes and pumps and everything like that, so.
Plus the saturation damage in the water tank as
Yeah.
well, so.
Yeah, so
Okay.
development is required to bring the water that they need to the city.
Sure, I understand.
And
Yeah.
they're required to do that, so there's this kind of maybe false narrative out there that these new developments are taking water away from the existing users, and that's not true. They are bringing in the equivalent water that they need for the new development, so it's just being added to the amount of water that the city is able to provide. Most of that water is repurposed from the agricultural use, the conversion to this purpose, and then even multifamily townhome developments, they're using far less outdoor water because there's not as much landscaping in those areas. So, and then I believe it was a couple years ago, we adopted those new standards for water-wise landscaping. We're seeing a lot of really successful implementation of that, and we hope that continues to increase. There is a housing shortage right now, and the city, we have to balance whether or not we're gonna just stop development or whether we're going to just make sure people are using the proper amount of water through water conservation to allow the needs of the housing market to also continue as well. But water is really a finite resource, and that's why the state put up $250 million in this last legislative session to meter secondary water, because they're finding that there is a lot of overuse outdoors, and people think they need a lot more than they do. And that's why we now have a requirement by state law to have every connection metered by the end of 2029. So, and then I think that the real bottom line is property owners have the right to develop their properties based on general plans, and bringing new water into the system is one of the ordinances and the statutes that we have in order to make that happen. So.
The one thing I add is, so you're talking ag here, and my comments earlier, the comments that I saw, the things that I've heard was specific to commercial, not ag. So it was not an attack on ag. The city, we know what ag brings, and I don't think any of the comments that I read were geared to that. It was more commercial and others, so like government, schools, those areas that have large grass, not, food, none of that. And so I think that's something that needs to be addressed. We need to add a bullet or mention it in that sense, because when we're looking at raising residential rates, and I did bring up, last time how much we're going to raise commercial, and I know there's concern with that because we want to entice business, but business is always going to get what they need because they're going to pass that on to the rest of us. And so if we're getting hit residential and then we're paying also for, whatever extra the business has, that's something that residents will have a hard time with. And so I think we need to address something on that commercial piece, commercial and other, and that was not specific to ag. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
Well, under the rates, the commercial is hit the hardest. They had the biggest increase on what we're proposing here tonight. They're increased.
Yeah, the increase was a bigger hit, but their actual rate was not. Does that make sense? Yeah, their base rate was not higher than residential.
Well, most of so we can skip, and you can tell us if you think this is something we need to address in the council meeting. I mean, development and ag use, and is it something you want us to address or show?
I think we do.
Okay.
I mean, there's been questions all over the board.
Yeah,
But they're
I
asking
think
questions.
on the commercial side, kind of to what Bettina's saying, I think a lot of people think of the commercial use as the lawn outside the business, but the commercial users are really like, they're using the water to do their work, right? Like Smiths or whatever, right? They're the ones that would be using the huge water users, right? When Chevron can take out a park strip, that's going to be great, but you're not really going to capture that in a water rate so much as if you were to raise water rates enough so that Smiths can't do their business.
Well, they're producing dairy products that all of us are buying.
I guess that's the phrase that
yeah.
there's a way we can phrase it that if we're talking about what people have on outside of their property, that's what we're trying to talk about. Which not going.
So, which we kind of addressed with the landscape ordinance last year. So
So
as far as the type of water, or where the water is being used.
Yeah, because it's almost like it's a visual thing,
It is absolutely.
and so that's why I like the idea of the water-wise landscaping and saying, look, we're incentivizing these, not just incentivizing, we have an ordinance that says this is what these types of businesses
Well,
have to
and
do.
Chad's department's highly encouraging them to use the water-wise landscape on any new development, so, I mean, I think those are the things we need to.
It's required.
Yeah, it's
required.
It's required. So it's one thing to incentivize and say, oh, please do it, but then say, look, we passed this because we're wanting these entities to do their share, you know?
So I guess that's the point, and I saw you, so I'm not gonna cut you off, but the point is to make sure that we address it so that the public understands the differences.
Yeah.
Because it's absolutely visual, and we understand that we need, obviously ag, and we also need these other businesses that are providing the services for us, but they need to understand what that looks like, and sometimes, you know, we couldn't break out the commercial because there's so many different buckets. Remember I asked about that a couple of times. It's complex, and that's a difficult thing to handle, but I do think that we have ways where we can get ahead of it, and that's what I'm saying. I would like for us to do that.
And with that water-wise landscaping bullet, I mean, you can say that we did that last year when we didn't raise rates on the residents. Like, we started with the businesses and with those kind of areas, that's where we started the ball rolling. And now this is just kind of the next step. Because I think if like this, just a landscape ordinance on its own in a vacuum, they're good. I just don't know if it won't be tailored to what we're, you know, so whoever's explaining it, Steve or whoever, that was the point of that, right? Was to direct that and to say we've made a legislative decision in the city that we want these businesses and these type of entities to curtail their water use.
Well, we were being proactive.
Yep. That it's not, this isn't,
And then now
they
we're
aren't the first
reality,
ones.
yeah.
Right.
Does that happen on churches and the schools?
That ordinance?
That for the increase?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
they're able.
so I can, when I get to this slide to talk about the rates, I can be sure to point out, I didn't write it on here, but I'll emphasize the fact that this up to 3/4 meter, this is most all of the residential. All of these other meter sizes are commercial and industrial. So there's an increase in the base rate for all users, right? And I apologize if that wasn't clear, but that is really what it is once you get above, I mean, there's a few 1-inch meters residential, but pretty much everything above a 3/4 inch meter is commercial, school, church, those other users, so.
Just like it's visual when they see the lawn.
Yeah.
It's visual when they see this too.
Yeah,
Because they're gonna go to the very end and say, wow, who's this person? Who's this little old lady that has, you know, the 8-inch meter or whatever? Right. In reality, that's not what it is.
Right.
Are we,
Good point.
so we sent the letter, I saw the letter. over
Yeah,
there.
the one that we had Chad work out
And,
for us.
and, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we've focused that a lot more on the residents. And that's where some of this angst is coming from, like here, we're curtailing our water use indoors, we can only do so much outdoor now. Yet it rained, and it rained a lot over the weekend, and yet there were businesses, there were schools, there were all these places that still have their sprinklers going. That's the, hey, how come you're not talking to them?
And we are talking.
And so that would be something to mention that, yeah, we've done this for residential, but here's the commercial outreach of, hey, you gotta do this as well. You know, businesses tend to be, well, we'll just be able to pay for it, it's fine. Or they're not even thinking about the landscape, or they have someone else that's doing the
Yeah, they
landscaping
hired
for
it
them,
out,
they
yeah.
hire it out, and they don't even know what's going on. These are things that just looks like we're telling them, the residents, you do this, business, you just do whatever you want. We just have to kind of get ahead of that, because it shouldn't be the case. And they're gonna pay more,
And it isn't.
but it's,
And
and
it isn't the case.
if they knew, they'd shut it off. Why would they? Why wouldn't they shut it off? So,
The mayor and I were in a meeting this morning and we basically said they've given out 400 warnings
already.
as of now.
As of, yeah.
The next step would be citation. I don't know if they could do citations, but.
They're gonna do their fine, they'll implement the fine.
I had a eye-opening conversation with the resident, and they were talking about at Guam, and they were, oh, you know, what is once a week? What does that mean? How does that work in practice and all that? It's a tough one to explain. It's super tough to explain, even if it seems really easy. But they followed that up with, well, we've done our best to try to curtail our, you know, I'm okay showering every other day and all that. You maybe have missed what we're trying to do here,
Well,
right? Because
yeah.
we want them to save water, but, you know, 75, yeah, it's conserves, 75% of the use is outdoors. So, you know, if your lawn looks a little, take the shower, please.
I have a neighbor that says, I'm taking my showers, I'll let my lawn go before I'll not have a shower.
You get into the, people take an attitude, you know, oh, I saw the church water on and it was raining, so what the hell's going on? But it's also, this is the question I keep getting, and I regretfully laugh, but it rained, so do I get an extra day next week? I said, no.
What's your day?
What's your day? You got rain. Okay.
3 in a row.
You know.
I was gonna say it earlier, but Bettina, when you bring up commercial, like churches and schools, I look at the use of the turf also. And, you know, there's soccer teams all over the city and there's not enough fields. So, you know, Dave talks about, you know, preserving the fields and letting the park strip or the parking lots go. And I look at that as a benefit to the community, so.
Well, I get questions.
Yeah.
I would say I get questions similar to that about what's the city doing. So I'd like to have some of the discussion be on what the city is doing. Because I don't want it to come across that we are implementing something that we're not willing to do ourselves. And we know we are, but they need to know that. And they need, because the question I had is, what's this, someone asked me what the city's doing, and I said, well, you'll see some parks turn brown because that's what's required. You'll see some parks stay a little bit better because we have a bunch of kids playing. The person who was asking the question totally understood that. Okay. This isn't an apples to apples comparison between my house, because I don't need my grass, but you do need the grass so the kids don't have injuries at Ellison Park. And so kind of meeting them halfway where, yes, the city is doing something, but it isn't exactly an apples to apples comparison, that we have other things that we have to make sure we take care of. And we have multi-million-dollar investments in parks and all that we have to maintain that are taxpayer funded as well, already paid for. So we can't just let those go. And so it's an unique balance, but I think would like something from the staff today just about what the city's doing. I mean, it doesn't have to be, long drawn out, but just tell our story a little bit, because we've made some major changes in the city. Someone was, and about the water rights landscaping, there was another person in the city who came up to me at that thing and said, we've been trying to convince our council to get on the water rights landscaping thing because we saw you guys did it and we're a year behind and all that. That's a good story to tell. Like, we were proactive about this, and that we've been trying to help the residents make better decisions, but we also are trying to see where we can do our best in making sure that our water in the city is used properly too. So telling the city and talking about the businesses, those are the issues that I think I felt as well from the discussions.
Well, and that our rates are not the highest
Yes.
in the area.
I think he's gonna get to that.
So we went out and looked at culinary water comparative rates, and we do it as far as, I had to use 10,000 gallons so that we're an apple-to-apple comparison. You're gonna be able to find some of these cities where their actual base rate is lower, but they give you 0 gallons. And as I went across these, the majority follow a model now of 0 gallons, and they charge you for every 1,000 gallons that you use. I'm not gonna mention names. There was one that I found that actually, if you use more than 30,000 gallons, regardless if you have secondary or not, your per 1,000 gallon rate is almost $15. So to say that ours going to $4.32 is higher than anyone else in Davis County is way off, right? And as a matter of fact, if we weren't to implement the proposed rate increase, we're at 2080. So we are well below the lowest city in the county. And I actually talked to somebody that lives in Clinton, And they said that they're talking about water rate increases right now as well. So maybe I won't say that in the meeting because I don't know if that's totally true. They lived there, they said there was talk, but maybe you lived there.
I don't know.
But anyway, I think the point of this is to show South Weaver's kind of an outlier. They had a bunch of infrastructure issues that they had to bond for, so that, but even if you start with Ogden, Sandy, Bountiful, and all the other Davis County areas, even with the proposed rate increase, we're still the lowest.
Yeah.
Now, Alex has always said, we don't base our rates based on if we're the lowest or the highest. We base our rates on what we need to operate and maintain a safe and viable system that provides quality water to the citizens, right? That's what we base our rates on. And so, I don't know what to say about all those higher rates. Some have a lot of debt. And so there wasn't, maybe you could give credit to this city that over the last 30 or 40 or 50 years, there's been a lot of forethought. There's been continual maintenance. I know a couple of these cities who had to put out significant amounts of debt just to get their system back up to where it should be because they neglected it forever, right? We don't do that, so.
And this is just a snapshot of, this also isn't apples to apples, I feel, because once again, this is if you bought or were charged your water like you buy gas. We're paying for a system here. We're not necessarily paying for gallons of water. Yes, we are, but it's not the only thing.
Right.
We're larger than most of those cities. Our water system is larger than most of those cities.
Much more complex than most of those cities.
And yet, the rate's still.
Right.
I mean, so it just shows how efficient and how, that's how we want it. We should be, yeah, so.
Okay.
Do we want?
The only other thing I have is just how it's going to affect the monthly bill and a little bit of talk about the dispatch center. So that's
Good.
we feel like we've probably answered all the concerns as best we can until more come up.
Well, I think you've answered the concerns, but it's an excuse, my next statement. But it's like a lawyer talking.
Make it quick, 'cause I gotta.
Okay, sometimes the lawyer's saying the truth, but you don't understand it. We're saying the truth, but a lot of the people in the city, they don't get it. And so by breaking it down, what we talked about, it gives them a chance to get it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job, so much talk about water. It's needed. What a big issue.
You
Welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting for June 2nd of 2022. Our start time is 7:02, so once again, I appreciate your patience on us starting here. As customary, we have each month we rotate our turn as far as the council and myself on who's going to lead out our meeting tonight with a prayer and a pledge. And tonight we have Councilman Bloxham that will be leading us on that. So Councilman Bloxham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I extended an invitation to Pastor Kevin Lambert of Church of the Nazarene here in Layton, but he wasn't able to make it. So you're going to get me instead. So I'm going to open with a prayer, and then we'll lead us the pledge. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for all the many blessings that thou hast given us. We're especially grateful to meet together in this wonderful community. We're grateful to discuss the issues of this city and to make the decisions that will be best for all of those who live here. We are grateful to have the freedoms that we enjoy, and we're grateful especially for those first responders in our police, fire, and public works who help make our life better each day. We ask thee to please bless us as we discuss and deliberate, that we may have thy Spirit to be with us. And we ask for these favors in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, stand and repeat the pledge with me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilman Bloxham. We'll go on to item number 2, which is municipal announcements. And I know each one of the council members kind of oversee different areas. So council, anybody have any announcements they'd like to make?
Couple from the Parks and Recreation Department. June 4th is going to be family recreation here at the Ed Kenley Plaza. Family game night from 5 to 7 p.m. So bring your family out. There'll be games around the plaza and a Mario Kart tournament in the amphitheater. So bring your gaming skills as well. Saturday, June 4th. Did I say that right? Yeah, Saturday, June 4th. Is that right? This coming Saturday. I did make a mistake. The game night, what's Monday? What's next Monday?
6th.
The 6th. So that game night is the 6th, Monday night. This Saturday, June 4th, is the pre-summer bash at the Surf and Swim from 7 to 10 p.m. at $2 admission. So get ready for summer.
Okay. Thank you. Bettina?
So in the way of arts, we have Davis Arts Council. Their summer night series starts up in June. You can visit their website and see if any tickets are available. They did have quite a bang when they opened up, but that will be going on throughout the summer. So please check out that. Also with On Pitch Performing Arts, they also have summer activities for your youth as well as events for you to go and participate in. So again, On Pitch Performing Arts, go to their website and Davis Arts Council and boost up your arts for the summer.
The Layton City Youth Council, a great bunch of kids. And what they do is try to emulate the council. But anyway, they're out cleaning up the park at, I call it the photography park, but the trail that goes up and around Hobbs and that. But they're out there picking up all the trash. And, I thought that was kind of neat for a bunch of kids to go out and do something like that. And it's not easy, and it was hot. So I was glad I had a meeting to go to. But anyway, just to let them know.
Yeah.
And one thing, I don't know who did it. I think it was Corey Waters. They redid the elevator. Yeah, it looks great. I don't know if we do stuff like that, but I was impressed because I used the elevator. So they did a great job in there. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, any other announcements? Okay, if not, then we'll go ahead and proceed with, we do not have any verbal petitions tonight. I think we took care of them all at our last meeting, which was fun and exciting. But I'll move on to our citizens comment period. So if anybody in the audience wishes to make a public comment on an item that's not on the agenda or that's under our public hearing, then you're welcome to come up to either side of the podium and state your name and go ahead and address the council at this time.
Thank you for a few minutes, Mayor and City Council of Layton. My name is Preston Cox. Live at 257 South, 3200 West in Layton. And just want to take a few minutes. And I know water is a big issue on the agendas of everybody lately, it seems like. And I'm the owner of Perennial Favorites Nursery, so water is a big factor to us as well. But I guess what I would like to say is, will you please, each one of you, take a few minutes and think of the value of the landscapes in Layton to the city of Layton. I served several years on the Utah Nursery and Landscape Association board, and many years ago in California, they had a similar situation where they had severe water shortages. But they got to the point where they limited the water for outdoor use to the point where they lost most of their landscapes in their communities. And talking with one gentleman that lived down there at the time, he said, years later, they realized that was a huge mistake that they made because they didn't put the value on landscapes that they should have at the time. And for some reason, it seems like landscapes are always getting the black eye for abuse of water. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of Utahns that are horrible at conserving water. These people that water their lawns every night or every other night, that's just blatant disregard for living in the second driest state in the union. But I'd just like to say, in your own individual homes and yards and landscapes, think about the value of that landscape to you. I mean, I love the landscape. I spend a lot of time in my garden and I enjoy it. That's my little oasis. That's my little decompression chamber, so to speak, that I can go out there and I can enjoy it. And I think a lot of us are the same way. I think that we really value having that little bit of alone time in the backyard, and having it look nice and pleasant and appealing. And so I just say, I guess please work with Weber Basin on this. Our reservoirs and our stream flows are better than they were last year by quite a bit. And I think another thing with Weber Basin is they need to realize that they can't keep selling water that they don't have. And I'll bring up the example of the Wasatch Peaks Resort. Now, Weber Basin has made a commitment to this resort on the Morgan side of 2,500 acre feet of water for a private resort that only those that buy a home or buy a membership in this resort can use this resort. So it's a ski resort. It's going to have an 18-hole golf course. It's going to have eventually 750 residents that live there, along with clubhouses and, things that take a lot of water. Well, you think about 2,500 acre feet of water. Okay, that's 4 square miles, 1 foot deep. Or if you take one of our super blocks out here in West Layton, that's a mile on every side, that would cover that with 4 feet of water. Okay. I'm just saying, I just don't think that that's right, that the rest of us continue to have to make sacrifices when they're still, like I said, I think, in my personal opinion, selling water that they don't have and that we don't have. And I think that the cities that are working with Weber Basin, I think the cities need to put a little more pressure on Weber Basin to be a little bit more responsible. And also more responsible with the numbers that they're reporting, because they're all over the board. And I watch them very closely. It's a big part of my income is, what water is going to be available for homeowners to buy plants and plant in their yard to enjoy. And so if you'll go back and you look at the numbers that they've been spouting ever since about January, you'll see that they're all over the board. I don't think they're very truthful in the numbers that they report. They're always changing the numbers that they report. One of the last reports I heard about 2 weeks ago was, we've been caught off guard a little bit because all of a sudden we're having 25% less runoff than we anticipated. Well, these are professionals at managing the water. Okay, so either they're flat out not telling the truth about the water available, or they're very incompetent on measuring the water in the snowpack. Either way, something I think needs to be done, and I think the cities that are serviced by Weber Basin, I think you really need to hold their feet to the fire on the water and where it's going and what it's being used for. And like I said earlier, a lot of Utahns wasted a lot of water, and they need to be educated, but they can have a decent landscape with reasonable amounts of water. But the amount of water that's been allocated this year, and I know this, I've been in this industry for 45 years, there's not enough water allocated to personal landscapes to sustain those landscapes, okay? And one blanket policy for all different types of soils, slopes, elevations does not cover it. You're going to lose, in my opinion, you're going to lose a lot of Layton's landscapes unless something's done to allocate a little bit more water for that use. So thank you again for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Preston, and thank you for the time that you've served this city on the Planning Commission as well. Okay.
So Don Fitzpatrick, 1197 South Grace Way. I just wanted to bring up a point, and I had mentioned it once before to Alex. I live right by Shoreline Junior High School. And every day when I leave in the morning, I watch some really dangerous circumstances occur on 1000 South as the road curves onto 1700 West as it approaches the road going into Shoreline Junior High School. Right now, there's an addition of construction on the west end of 2200 and 1000. We have a lot of trucks, traffic, or trailers and everything on that road. I know school's out, but it's not going to be long before it starts up again. The road is currently closed at that junction for construction for a new subdivision that is going in. We have 13 homes nearing completion. We have another subdivision just to the west that is probably going to have 30 to 40 homes in it. The Ovation home subdivision, I think, has close to 20, and Husky has been approved for about 12 homes. These kids will all walk at this intersection. There is currently a crosswalk east-west on the road that Shoreline sits on, but there is currently nothing on 1000 West as it rounds to 1700. We have a lot of parents that take their children because the sidewalks are not complete in that area. There's no really safe way at this point for the kids to get there. But I'm just really concerned, and I think that the city, along with the school district, needs to look at this intersection before school starts in August. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Patrick. And also, I want to thank you for your service here at the city, both on the Planning Commission and a council member.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Laureen Kamalu, one of the 3 Davis County Commissioners. So Farmington is the county seat, 61 South Main Street, for my address, I guess. And I just want to, first of all, thank everyone in this room, the electeds, the other public servants, the citizens who engage. It's so important. Just really, really grateful for service and for engagement. And of course, the county is also local government, and we strive to be supportive to all 15 cities. So we just encourage, and I've already said this in the work session to everyone who was in that room, but to citizens as well, to feel free to reach out to the Davis County Commission for ideas, questions, feedback, all of that sort of thing too. We live in a great county, and it's because we have great people and wonderful leadership in each of the cities. I just want to tell everyone that we have a really important event for the whole county next week, including all of the public. It's been years of discussion and effort to make decisions for the Memorial Courthouse, the building in Farmington just north of the current administration building with big, beautiful columns that was built right around 1830. And it had additions to it, a lot of history, a lot of important work, and some interesting and funny kinds of things there too. But it's been vacant for just a few years, and for several years it was determined there would be a historic renovation of that 1830s building, which is just about complete. And on a week from tomorrow, so Friday, June 10th, at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, there will be a public ribbon cutting and open house. And everyone is invited to come and to see this really, it's a great icon in the entire county. And again, 1 p.m. is the ribbon cutting, and then open house all the way till 6 p.m. for everyone to be able to come and walk around inside and see what was preserved. There's some pretty cool things like old corbels and original marble and light fixtures, and it's a wonderful thing. Inside of that building, after this open house and moving forward, the county work that will go on there will include the civil attorneys group and the public defense and the pretrial group, as well as upstairs tourism. American Legion will have just a little space to keep doing their service out of there. The old courtroom will be an open space for county kinds of events. And so it's going to continue to be really well used. Some of those have been in temporary spaces for the last several years, or never really had space much that they need. So that's kind of my big thing, to invite everyone and also to thank you. And it's really nice to be back in person after the pandemic, and appreciate, again, your service and working with you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner, and likewise, we appreciate your service. Okay, is there anyone else on public comment? Okay, Mr. Tudor.
Tommy Joe Tudor, 1757 Gregory Drive, Layton. First thing is to all of my thousands of military friends, and thank you for awarding the police and firemen. This has been a great month for last month and this month. And of course, you all know I served my country 20 years of my life. And so I'm for all of them: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. Won't want to leave any out. And so I'm quite high on favoritism, and I have credentials to go up and talk to anybody at Hill Air Force Base. And I've done that for years and years, since 1970. So I just like some nice thank yous to everybody, and get to know about the building in Farmington. I used to go there and register my car before you was born. And now I'm going to spread the word to go to Farmington and also to the building and see what you're going to do, because I'm of the interest all the time to get things done. And I thank all of you for you serving.
Thank you.
This is serving and good night. And you all have a great day. And the holidays of the great 4th of July coming up, which I know many military that I've been getting on the phones to come down to the Layton Park and, of course, buy everything you want. And I think they will. I think you're going to have a great 4th of July here in Layton, Utah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
I'm Stephen Payton. I live at 2567 North Hillfield Road. It's Valley View Homeowners, Inc. I've lived there since 2006. I lived in Utah for 30 years. This is my third March. Those 30 years since March. When I moved into Valley View, we all owned shares in our corporation, and so we co-own the land that we're sitting on. And so when I bought into there, I traced my shares all the way back to the title before I moved in and saw that everything looked right. I recently tried to do the same, and things aren't right. And so as I started digging into these things, there were some issues that have kind of interrupted my paper trail to my shares.
When you're talking shares, are you saying in particular water or land? Right here.
Oh.
Because if you're speaking water, we are actually going to have a public hearing here in a minute.
Okay, no, well, so this is the land.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
And
clarify.
the water, but the land primarily.
Okay.
I know we have a certain share with the water too. But there was something posted on a neighboring property of ours, and that's why I'm here. And that property is 2535 North Hillfield Road. And they plan on changing from CP1 plan neighborhood to MU, mixed use. And I would like to remind
Okay, I don't want to interrupt you, but we actually have that as an agenda item, and we'll be glad to let you speak later on that topic if you want. Right now, it's more of general ideas. Yeah, open to general that's not on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have a copy of the agenda, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so then the other thing I would like to bring up is the water. And having come from California and the water thingy, you know, I came from the Central Valley and we lost our water and went through all the similar things that were going on. The thing that actually was the selling point for us Californians moving here was, hey, Utah, we have the water and we have the water rights. I don't know what happened to it, but one of the concerns I have, similar, you know, having a green enough property is good for our health, but also having enough runoff going into the lake might actually be more important for our health because there's lots of chemicals and things that blow up and catch the air and everything. And we might be fortunate enough to be north of the big problem. And so that would be the other thing. And I look forward to the agenda item. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on a topic that's not on the agenda? Okay. If not, I'll go ahead and proceed. I do want to bring your attention to the fact that we did have one item on our consent item, which we've decided to, we had to pull it due to some information that we still needed. So we'll put that on a future agenda. And so I'll go ahead and go down then to our public comments. And once again, I'm going to exercise the authority of the mayor's chair to be able to shuffle the deck here. I know that we have 3 public hearings here. So what I'd like to do is take item number A, which is our budget proposal, and shift that down to the bottom of the agenda. So I'm going to start out with the rezone request, which is exactly what Mr. Payton was speaking about. And in order to start that, I'm going to call up Chad. Mr. Chad Wilkinson, who is our Community and Economic Director, and he's going to run through the details on that before we open up our public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The first item here tonight is, as was stated, is a rezone application. I'm going to go to that just a few slides to give some background on that. It is a rezone at 2535 North Hillfield Road. The proposal is to take that property from CP1, which is a commercial zone, to mixed use. MU is the designation for that zone. The property shown there on the map with the red star, that's again 2535 North Hillfield Road, about just a little bit under an acre, 0.83. Here's an aerial photo with the zoning, the current zoning overlaid. You can kind of see through that aerial photo that this is the existing property. To the north, it has also commercial zoning. This is where the existing Alpha Graphics use is. Over to the west, we've got some residential. I think this is the area where this gentleman resides. We've got some single-family zoning to the south, and then some multifamily zoning directly across Hillfield Road to the east with, again, this RMH, which is our residential mobile home zone, kind of surrounding to the west and east there. Just, again, showing an aerial photo, you can see the existing building on the property. It's been a variety of different uses over the years. One of those is a commercial or a contractor type use. There's some storage that's been placed in the back of the property along with some other uses over the years. Excuse me. Just want to talk briefly about the general plan. So this property is general planned along a mixed-use corridor. That's what this cross-hatched area is. This is an area designated in our 2019 general plan that's appropriate for a mix of uses. That mixed-use corridor anticipates not only commercial but also residential use that would be developed along that corridor area along Hillfield Road. The reason that area was chosen as one of those mixed-use corridors is that it meets a number of factors that are important to support that type of mixed-use corridor. First of all, it's along a major transit route. There's a bus route that runs right along Hillfield Road. Secondly, it's along one of our major arterial streets. So this mixed-use zoning provides a transition from the busy arterial street to some of those less intensive uses to the west and to the southwest of this property. So this particular proposal would be to change the zoning again from CP1, current CP1, to a mixed-use zone in anticipation of construction of some multifamily apartment-type uses on the property. The Planning Commission did review this at their previous meeting. The recommendation from the Planning Commission was a positive recommendation to approve this change from CP1 to MU based on compliance with the general plan for this area. And so staff would also share that recommendation. We recommend that the council approve ordinance or adopt ordinance 22-05, approving the rezone request from CP1 to MU. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay, council, do you have any questions before we open it up to the public? Okay, if there's no questions then on your behalf, I would need a motion to open a public hearing.
I move that we open the public hearing for this discussion item.
Okay, it's been moved in second. So the floor is now yours. As far as the public, you're welcome to comment regarding item number B on our agenda, which is a rezone request. And once again, you can step up to the mic on either side of the podium. And if you could state your name, please do not give us your phone number. But if it does require your phone number, we'd ask that you give it to a recorder in private. And the time is now yours. We do ask that if you're speaking on behalf of a group, you can take a little bit more time. But if it's individually, then we ask that if you could, keep your comments to right around 3 minutes, but I won't hold you to it. So the floor is now yours.
I think something fell off of this microphone, but you can still hear, I believe. My name is Phil Holland with the Holland Group. I don't want to be redundant and cover a lot of the good things that Chad explained. I want to maybe just state that from time to time, land uses change and they become obsolete. And the life of this property, it was probably obsolete years and years and years ago. And so we are finding it currently to say, what is the best use for this piece? We're consistent with the general plan, calling it mixed use, and want to move forward with that. We're excited about its location and proximity to shopping, to some of the major employers in the state, schools. So we're excited to move forward, and I'm the applicant, glad to answer any questions. Maybe after you get a couple of comments, if you have any questions, you can ask those. But I'm here for that. Thanks.
Thank you for being here.
Found it.
I'm all for improvements and change. My issue is how do we provide oversight on like for instance, how does that zoning compare to what's behind them? Like I don't know if we're CP1 or not. I didn't hear on that side. Do we know what behind that property is? that, because we're like, I don't think we're mixed use, we're residential, right? High density residential or something like that.
When you say behind, are you talking about the property to the west here?
Pretty much where the bubble is.
Well, yes, that's RMH. That's a residential mobile home zone.
Okay, yeah, and that would be us. I'm trying to figure out the best way to, I'm sorry, just hadn't time to figure this out. So do you own the property, or you're the developer, right? Is that what you're saying?
Are you fine with him coming up, or do you want to answer that?
I can answer. This is our developer. Do you own the property now, Phil? Okay, so potential developer of the property. Yep.
Okay. And that's fine. Is there someone I can talk to offline? Because there is an issue that I don't, it's kind of delicate, you know? Maybe, I don't think it'd be something we want to discuss in public necessarily. So who would I talk to in that regard?
I'm happy to stay after this meeting and talk to you if you like.
Yeah, what I came here to do, I don't want to stop anything, but there's a legal issue that I need enough time to have them look at something, and it does affect our shares on our property and our members. And it gets down to this: my neighbor across the street was ill in health. I like to help my neighbors, and I said, well, gee, we have these shares, they're tied to our property. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to create some kind of leverage and help her fix her roof and do all this kind of stuff. But then in the process of doing that, I found out, oh, wait a minute, someone's already done this. And so there's a thing going on, and it does involve neighboring properties, and so it gets kind of confusing.
So you're talking boundary lines?
Yeah, it's like they'll change a boundary line, and our serial number would change, and then SBA loans would be taken out and mixed in with our property. And then now I'm like, well, I can't secure any loan for my neighbor because these loans came from somewhere, and I don't know where that money went, you know? And so, and I don't know, and then when someone found out about it, they told me to destroy all my documents, and I talked to the lawyer, and he says, don't destroy anything and don't sign anything, and I'm just kind of confused. And so I'm hoping that asking the council to maybe give me a little time to sort some stuff out, because I just found out about this. I just had a lawyer refer which proper lawyer I need to address certain issues that are going on. And I don't know, so I'd probably try to ask for time, but I don't know what kind of schedule you're on, and I don't want to interfere with things if I can avoid it. But if there's a possibility for me to figure out a few things, that'd be great. And that's kind of all I wanted to say.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, and obviously you have the right gentleman here tonight to be able to talk to that. Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this topic?
Hi, my name's Jaron Hale. I'm the owner of the Alpha Graphics next door to the project that you guys are deciding on. I just, I don't know what the plan is for the development, but in mixed use, I guess that's commercial plus residential. The only concern I have, and I'm for new neighbors, but there's, you know, I don't, if the developer could address the issue with access to the property. When I developed my parcel, the state made me deed a certain chunk of that property so that all future access to that property would have to go through our current approach into both properties from that one approach. So I don't know how that's going. If he could address that and fill you guys in on how that is. I'm fully aware of that access. I had to deed that property to the state. So I don't know. I'd like to see kind of the plan there. and if they've talked to the state or not. I was here at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and they talked about putting a median in and things like that. And I'd just like to find out how that's going and just a little more info so that, because a median going down the middle of Hillfield in that intersection would be detrimental to people accessing our business.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously their business, future business, if that's what it becomes. So anyway, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, anyone else? Chad, would you? Okay, sure. Mr. Holland, if you wouldn't mind address that for us?
Yeah, thank you. We have had an application meeting with the Department of Transportation. Originally, when Alpha Graphics was approved for access onto Hillfield Road, which is a UDOT right-of-way, that access, are you guys looking at the same thing I am?
Mm-hmm.
That access matches up perfectly across the street. And so they are giving both of these properties one access. There's currently a cross-access easement on the Alpha Graphics, which allows the property in question today that access. The talk of median came in when I posed the question to UDOT, if we provided another access, which could be limited, right in, right out, what would take place? And that was when the idea of a median from 2475 all the way up to that access point. And so I don't believe that we would do that. I think that the access would come as UDOT intended it through Alpha Graphics. Hopefully that answered his question.
Okay. Council, does anybody have some questions on this?
Sure. I have questions. So it was my understanding from the discussion during the work meeting that Alpha Graphics was aware of this
Access.
entrance, this access way. And it's sounding as though Mr. Hale is not aware of that. So can someone please address that? I mean, the discrepancy between the current owner of the business, Alpha Graphics, and the future potential owner, because it was my understanding that there was an agreement and that was okay.
Yeah. And I don't want to speak for him. There he is right there. But I think when he said that he gave property to UDOT, I believe that that's probably what he was talking about. There is a cross-access easement recorded on his property that allows access into this parcel that we're talking about today. And I believe he's aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilman Bloxon? Oh, okay.
Chad, with that, so the decision on the access point, is there a development agreement that's, if I don't have my iPad with me, but was there a development agreement that's going to follow this?
There's no development agreement. This will be approved by the Department of Transportation, though, and they have taken steps to put together a shared access there with the development of Alpha Graphics. There's an existing easement.
Yeah.
They will be held to whatever access management plan that UDOT's been really kind of creating in that parcel for a long time since Alpha Graphics was put in.
Because the developer said that if they were to want to explore that, then that would bring that access point, the median would come into fruition, basically, if they wanted to do that. So it sounded like to me that the decision is based on what the developer wants to do with their site plan. And that means that Alpha Graphics would basically have to just hope that the developer doesn't want a second access point. Is that right?
That's probably a question for UDOT, but my understanding in our brief conversations with them is that this is what they've been planning all along, is that shared access for both of them. I don't know that they'd given other access when they have, and Steve may want to chime in on this, but usually when they have created a situation like this with the shared access, their intention is that is the access. They don't in that case generally give out additional access points when they've created a shared access like this. Do you want to add to that at all?
Sure, they'll stick to their guns on this. I've been through this process and they don't budge.
I'm getting the head nod from our city engineer as well. So,
okay.
Yep.
I guess my question was if the developer wanted a second access point.
No, what I'm saying is the UDOT, because they've created the shared access, our experience is they will require this to be the access.
Okay. So even if the developer wanted a second access, UDOT's going to say no.
I can't speak for them, but that's been our experience.
Okay.
Yep.
Obviously we want to make sure that Alpha Graphics isn't negatively affected by a zone change, that they don't have the ability to decide on the site plan. So it's basically completely out of their hands when they would experience a negative effect on their business by people not being able to turn west of their property. So
that hasn't been our experience with these type of shared accesses.
Any other questions?
Do we have a time frame of when you expect to hear back from UDOT? That's probably to the developer.
I'll let him chime in, but they'll have to go through a permit process for their access point. And whenever there's a change of use like this, they have to go through UDOT's access management through their permit staff to get a permit for the access point. And that'll be sometime, what we're talking about tonight is the zone change, which that's not, we don't talk about the specifics of the development plan at this point, but eventually they will come for a development plan that'll have to be approved by UDOT. The access will have to be approved by UDOT as well. So I don't have a time. Maybe Phil might be able to give you a little more timing on that.
Well, and I understand your point. The question I'm posing is, I know that this is a zone change and that is a development plan which is down the road, but the developer's already talking to UDOT. So if you have some type of time frame for when they should respond to you, that would be awesome right now.
Yeah, so when we go into site plan, if we get a rezone, it's probably 3 or 4 months by the time UDOT says yes or no. And really, so let me be clear on what we're talking about, because the median, if you can see the 2 driveways on my property, or I don't own it, the owner's here, by the way. The 2 access points, that bottom one would be what we entertained. Would be a right in, right out, just for flow. And really, it's for the fire department. Fire department said, it's okay if you have it, but you don't have to have it. So that eliminated the entire conversation of a second access. But if UDOT said, yeah, we'd like you to have one, the median would not block Alpha Graphics. It would go all the way from 2475 up to that right in, right out. But I can tell you, I'm not going to try to get that. UDOT has already, I don't need approval from UDOT because the access exists already. So when I said 3 or 4 months, that's for them just to say, yeah, we're okay with what you're doing. I'm eliminating 2 accesses, which gives me brownie points for them, and holding fast to the Alpha Graphics access, which is by right already established. So hopefully that gave you a little bit, but yeah, I don't think we'll have a second access. I certainly won't be trying to get it. I know the city probably doesn't want it, and UDOT certainly doesn't want it.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Okay, is there any other comments? If not, I'll look for a motion to close. Oh, excuse me, Councilman Roberts.
Before we do, I'd like to explain my vote, Mayor. I'll be voting no for this. I hold some of the same concerns that some of the planning commissioners did in their discussion. And Chad, I appreciate the discussion in the work meeting that we had. But my reason to vote no is this is a major retail, major commercial arterial road in our state. I agree with the housing element. I have no problem with the high density housing that close to the base, because I know we need to add housing in this area. But I just have concerns with the mixed use zone because I believe when the general plan was adopted that this would be mixed use on most properties. And I would like to see that, whether it's changing the mixed use ordinance. But for that reason, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Okay. Council, if you don't have any other questions, I would entertain a motion that we close this public hearing and take action on ordinance 22-05.
I move that we close the public hearing on this rezone.
Okay. The public hearing is now closed, so now I'll need to entertain a motion as far as either acceptance of the proposed rezone request for 2335 North Hillfield Road from oh, yeah, you're right. I heard that. Thank you. There was not. So it's brought to my attention that I did not accept a second on closing the public hearing. So, Council, I need a second. No, good catch, Kim. Okay, Councilman Robert will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll now proceed. So, rather than me read this, I'm going to ask the council member, would you please take action on item B of our public hearing? You can. Speak into the mic, though.
I'm going to vote, excuse me. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the rezone request at 2535 North Hillfield Road as listed under Public Hearings B. Ordinance 22-05.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Being that it's a public hearing, I'll take a roll call vote on this. So I'll start out with Councilmember Bettina Smith Edmondson.
I'll vote yes, but I would like to add that that is because I agree with the need for the density housing and also with the mixed use is the purpose is to be able to mix that use across that area. So not necessarily having to be in one location. And also because the gentleman, Mr. Hale, seems to be okay with the one access.
Councilman Roberts?
Nay.
Okay. Councilman Bloxham?
Aye.
Councilman Thomas?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Okay. There you have it. The vote's 4-1. Thank you, Council. And we'll then go ahead and go on to item number C, which is another rezone request. And since that I'm handling these individually, Chad, go ahead and present the information, then we'll open up the public hearing again.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Mayor, Council. This is another request for a rezone. This is ordinance 22-06, considering rezone from BRP to CP3, 748 West Heritage Park Boulevard. The location of the property is shown on the map with the red star showing the approximate location. We'll get a little closer with an aerial photo. You may be familiar with this building. This is where the existing Roosters restaurant is located. You can see surrounding land uses. Well, first of all, the streets, just to orient you, here's Heritage Park Boulevard, Layton Hills Drive is right here. Across the street to the east, there's some single-family residential zoning, R18. For the most part, though, this is predominantly surrounded by similar zoning, BRP. There's some CP3 to the south, just separated by one property. Some CP3 to the west. So all kind of within this same general commercial type of a zone. The purpose for this rezone request is that the Roosters would like to include a bar as part of their use. We have looked at this request. The BRP does not allow for bars. That's the real reason for the CP3 zoning, is just to provide a zone that would allow for a bar. The location is compliant with all of our, first of all, with the general plan. The general plan calls for a number of different types of commercial uses. It's our urban district general plan. It's one of our higher density zoning districts, not just residential, but commercial densities and use. So that's the property shown in our general plan. It's also compliant with all of the spacing criteria, locational criteria in state and local code for a bar use. So based on that, and based on analysis of the general plan, staff is recommending approval. The Planning Commission also reviewed this rezone request and unanimously recommended approval of this rezone from BRP to CP3. And we would do the same, requesting that you adopt ordinance 22-06, I think. Did I get that right? Yeah, 06. Excuse me. I think I didn't get that number right.
It is. You said it
06,
right.
thank you. I can't see that on my screen right now. Thank you. 06.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions before we open this back up? Okay, go ahead, Councilman Thomas.
Is the bar, it seems like is it outside too? Like, can you serve, I don't know, whatever beer outside?
They're going to have a little addition that they're building as
That's
part
what
of
I mean.
this.
Yeah, there
so
was a
certainly
little,
that would be part of
like
that.
an open area.
Yeah,
with
an outside.
tables or whatever.
That's right.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. I'm going to ask our attorney, do I need to reopen this up since we closed the other one, right? So I do need to have action then to open up our public hearing on rezone request for ordinance 22-06.
I move that we open the public hearing for rezone request for ordinance 22-06.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. This is now a public hearing, so anyone in the audience or would like to speak regarding this particular item, please do so. If we ask that you state your name.
My name is Garrett Goff. I work with Garn Development, and we own the building here. Roosters has been a tenant of ours for over 15 years, I think 17 years. And we used to own and operate the Corbins that was there, so we're very familiar with the space. Roosters came to us with the idea of having all of the Corbin space isn't going to be a bar. Some of it's going to be event space that they've done, so it's an expansion of Roosters almost. It's actually a part of Roosters. And then the bar side is, it's more of a 21 and older restaurant, and I can let Nathan speak to it. It's going to have a little bit more of a sophisticated menu. There will be drink options as well. But if you guys have a chance to stop by and see it, the construction is going fantastic. They've done an outstanding job. And we as the building owners are thrilled to have them. And I can answer any of your guys' questions that you have for me in the interim. Or if you want, we can ask Nathan any of the questions about the specifics. Any questions for me?
Anyone have any questions here?
I just have one question. Since some construction has already been done, is that construction that's been done necessary for the rezone? Like, was it done prior to the, okay.
So in the event that the rezone wouldn't happen, it would be an expansion of a restaurant. But they started the construction with us, and then the liquor license and things came up, so they needed to have the rezone. So that's why we addressed that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to just confirm the reason for the rezone is to be able for a liquor license. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, council members.
Yeah. Is there any other comments?
I'd like one.
Just regarding this topic, please.
Yes, that's it. With you. Give me an estimated time and date of when Roosters will be open here. Your turn.
Hello, my name is Nathan Layton, 584 North, 3200 West, and I'm the Director of Operations over Roosters Brewing Company. To clarify the question, so there is we're calling it our indoor patio. The addition onto the building that we are adding is actually an enclosed all glass indoor patio that will be on the bar. So the bar business will not be outside. And then we also want to, we also have the patio on the back, and that will remain Roosters Restaurant, which is for all ages. And then we'll have an event space as well. So.
Well, good. I can say, I'm just going to make my own personal observation and comment here. I know that this is certainly a hot spot for tourism and folks that come in from out of state as well as within state. And this area really, I think, lends to this type of activity here. And quite honestly, I want to say thank you to Roosters, because Roosters has been a great partner at the Davis Arts Council and helping providing meals there as well. And it's great company. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, council, I'll bring it back to you to take action here. You'd need to close your public hearing and make a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the rezone request 748 West Heritage Park Boulevard from Business and Research Park to CP3 Planned Regional Commercial Ordinance 22-06.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we approve the rezone request. Once again, I'll take a roll call vote on this. I'll start out with Councilman Bloxham.
Aye.
Councilman Roberts.
Aye.
Councilman Bettina Smith Edmonton.
Aye.
I have to say it all the way in order to get it out. Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
And Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous. Okay, that concludes the two business items. Well, all of them are business items, but at least the ones that were here for that, you're welcome to stay, or you can go, and that, which is the reason why I shuffled the deck here, because now we'll move on to item number A, which is a public hearing regarding our proposed budget for the fiscal year of 22-23. So before we start this public hearing, we're going to have a pretty good in-depth presentation on it. Mr. Tracy Probert, our finance director, is going to give us some information, and I believe he's going to have some assistance here so that we can kind of help also educate our citizens as far as some of the proposals that are being presented here tonight. So, Tracy?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. So tonight we're holding a public hearing on the budget, and as part of that, it will include discussion of the water rate increase. As far as the budget goes, the proposed budget tonight, we take public comment just so you have a timeline. Then from the 3rd, which is tomorrow, until the 15th, the council has time to consider those public comments or concerns, any review, discussion with council, and any adjustments that may be needed to the budget. And then it's proposed that on June 16th, we adopt the final budget so that we can meet state deadlines as far as adopting a budget. This budget proposes a general fund of just over $51 million, total citywide budget just over $132 million. Included in that are cost of living and merit adjustments for employees, just over $2.8 million in capital equipment, over $30 million in capital projects, which includes projects in all of the utilities, water, stormwater, sewer, and streets projects, parks projects, dispatch center related project. Some of those other major projects that I've listed here just for information, 2700 West from Gentile to Hillfield. That's a major project that not only incorporates streets, but all of the utilities. Millions of dollars poured into that project. And Ellison and Commons Park shop facilities. Those have been long awaited, and there's a significant amount of funding for those facilities in this budget. And also the Gordon Avenue secondary water trunk line. So I've only pointed out 3 of the major projects, but they were the 3 largest projects in the list of projects that we reviewed previously. One of the purposes tonight, we adopted the tentative budget on May 5th. And before we hold a public hearing, we need to review things that have changed. And so one of those things that changed is the proposal for water rate increases. Another item that changed is the proposal to build a new 911 dispatch center. And then there's been some market-based wage adjustments. We aren't going to discuss the details of those, but some of the wages that have been proposed previously have changed in the final budget. So as we talk about the first item, the proposed water rate increase, it's important for everyone to understand that in 2017, a water master plan was adopted and a water rate study was performed, and that rate study was also adopted as part of the plan. And that plan included some rate increases. One was 35%, one was 20%. Those occurred in 2018 and 19. And then along came the pandemic, right? And that interrupted our plan as far as being able to increase rates. And the council unanimously decided back then that
it just wasn't the right time to do that because of everything that we could potentially be facing with this pandemic in the early stages of, in the early months of 2020. So that third increase was foregone. In combination with that, we now experience extreme levels of inflation. So we have inflation pressure in compensation, operational supplies, other forms of operation expense, and particularly in capital projects, which at this point, as of today, some of those projects are up to 30% over their original estimates. We also want to, another reason for this rate increase is to help maintain our top-rated Class A system. Now, that doesn't mean that we have a gold-plated system or some kind of a, what might be referred to as a Cadillac system, right? In other words, an excessive system. What we have is a system that provides safe, quality drinking water in a dependable manner with great consistency, and thus the state has rated it as a top-tier Class A system. And as a city, we need to maintain that. As residents, I'm sure they want us to maintain that, right? Everybody wants to be able to depend on water, and if our public works director was here, he would say, if you don't have water and you don't have a system, you don't have a city, right? So I always like to quote him. He has good quotes. But on top of that, we've talked tonight already about drought and conservation efforts, and the city, if our engineer pipes in on this, he would have to say that the city's done an excellent job of being very compliant, addressing the mayor's challenge last summer, cutting way back, being all on board for doing our part. The city, the businesses, especially the residents, have done their part to do that. And another small reason for a rate increase has to do with that conservation. It affects the amount of revenue that comes in. The original model planned on conservation because of a tiered rate structure, but it didn't plan on conservation during an extreme drought. And so that does have an effect on revenue. I'm going to turn some time over to City Engineer Steve Jackson to talk a little bit about the system itself.
Thank you, Tracy. So as part of this master plan that was completed and adopted in 2017, it's a critical component to operating and maintaining the system. It looks at a comprehensive analysis of our water system, the existing system, the way it stands today, so that all existing users are provided the water in the sustainable and effective quality manner that we have. But it also looks at supply and demand projections going forward. And as Tracy mentioned, it did take into account some conservation. It took into account growth in the city as our population continues to expand. And then it also looks at the age of the system and how much money we should be putting into maintenance and rehabilitation of those system components that we have. The peak supply and demand projections are also taken into account so that everybody that needs their water when they need it can get it. We don't like to see major drops in pressure or volumes during those peak time demands. But then it also looks at the distribution system and how we move that water throughout the system. We have over 20,000 connections that we provide water for every single day. And it takes a lot of pipes and a lot of components to do that. And then it also recommends system improvements, not only system improvements for future growth, but also system improvements to help keep the system as existing, sustainable and functional. And out of that master plan evaluation, we received a 10-year capital facilities plan, which outlines a lot of these projects that we're trying to get completed, as well as an impact fee analysis for new development and new growth to pay their proportional share of the costs of this system as it expands, and then the rate study, as we've mentioned. So some statistics of our system. It is not a simple system. It is one of the biggest systems in the state. 300 miles of pipe ranging anywhere from 4 to 24 inches, 3,300 hydrants, 3,600 valves, or 7,300 valves, 20,000 plus meters that are servicing all of the residents, all of the population every day of Layton City. 15 major storage tanks, over 23 million gallons of water is stored in those, with 9 pump stations, 5 deep water wells that we own and operate ourselves, which helps keep our costs down compared to having to purchase all of the water on the wholesale market. We do have 7 Weber Basin connections that provide almost 15,000 gallons of water per minute during those peak day demands. And then we have 51 pressure reducing valves that operate 20 different pressure zones throughout the city. Overall, when the master plan was completed, that estimated cost of the replacement value of our system is $265 million. So it's an incredible investment that the citizens have made into their system. And it's, like Tracy mentioned, it is the most important utility that we have because everything relies on this system. As we continue forward, looking in the 5-year capital improvement plan, we have quite a few capital projects for conveyance of water through the culinary and secondary systems, almost $29 million that need to be taken into account. A lot of those are main trunk lines that were mentioned, the Gordon Avenue secondary water trunk line that will help provide water out into the west area of Layton. We have some storage reservoir projects, pump and well projects that are also substantial in cost, but they are the lifeblood of the system. Without those pumps and wells, it's impossible to move the water where it needs to go. We have meter installation and replacement projects. This includes the installation of meters and secondary water throughout the city, which will help with the conservation efforts that we have. It will also help educate people who use the secondary system as to how much they're using. We find that a lot of people that waste water don't understand that they're wasting the water because they don't have a way to measure it. And it's a really effective tool. That's why the state has put in $250 million this last legislative session to try and help get these meters installed and put in place. We have SCADA upgrades, which is our telemetry, which helps us operate the system, as well as some major operations and equipment projects like large capital equipment that we need to operate the system. So in total, we have $50 million worth of capital improvement projects that need to get completed. We've looked at this. We've tried to stretch that out to make sure we're not accelerating projects unnecessarily, but we also need to meet the demands and the sustainability of the system. As we look at water use, this is a source from the Utah Rivers Council. We have a lot of questions about agricultural use outdoors versus municipal industrial use, which is that M&I water shown on the screen. It's true. The agricultural users use a lot of water in this state, but they also produce a lot of product and they own water rights. And the state law for water rights is there are priority rights that people have, and it's first in time, first in right, which means if you were a water right holder first, then the water that is available is yours first. And the agricultural community does their best to try and be efficient. I know there's a lot of people who say, well, they're not doing their part. They are doing their part. There are numerous examples of people in the agricultural community trying to conserve water. They've been cutting back water multiple years in a row now just to try and save the water and put it to use and spread it out as far as we can get it to go. The municipal side of things, 75% of the water is outdoor water. That's a big chunk of the water that is, even though it's 15% of the total water use, it's an allotment that we have. As a city, we own a certain amount of water allotment and the citizens are able to use that. We want to make sure that we're putting it to the most effective use that we can. So as we look forward at what's going on, we require new development to bring in water shares into the system. They don't just come onto the system and take what's existing, source for the citizens that are already here. They have to bring in their own water, which means most of the time it's a conversion from the agricultural water that was already being used on the land into this M&I water purpose. It doesn't take away those existing rights, but it supplements and brings those in to the city for us to deliver this water through the multiple systems that we have. Residential developments typically use much less water than the agricultural flood irrigation. That's mostly because we put more hard surface down. When we build developments, the homes don't need to be watered on their roofs, obviously, and their driveways. And so we try to limit that as much as possible. And so we see a reduction in the water that's being used there. Multifamily and townhome developments use far less water simply because they have a lot less outdoor water use because of the landscaping. They do put more units on the site typically, but we see that there is a reduction there. Layton recently adopted new standards for water-wise landscaping. This is a requirement for all commercial and PRUD and multifamily projects to implement this this water-wise landscaping requirement. Now, a lot of them have embraced it on their own. They want to do it because it's the responsible thing to do. As we see them implement those water-wise landscapings, we're seeing that it's actually beautifying the community as well, but they're doing their part to make sure that they're not wasting the water outdoors or overusing. We do have a lot of people who call and when they notice somebody that they think is overusing, the Public Works Department is out responding to those daily, weekly. We receive multiple calls and we're trying to help educate and help encourage people to be wise with their water usage. Nobody wants to be in this situation with the water restrictions that we have, but we're all trying to do our part. Even the city, from a Parks Department standpoint, they're actually evaluating every parcel that the city owns and waters. They're taking a look and they're saying there's certain parks that need to have water on the fields because we have soccer games, we have other recreational events that need to have that water, but then in other parts of the park, they're cutting off the water completely. Some of them are going no water, some of them are going down to just the minimal amount of water that is needed to keep the grass alive so that when this temporary drought condition is gone, we can bring those landscapes back. So we're working very closely with the Parks Department, watching the water use. They're doing the most that they can. They've switched a lot of their systems over to smart meters, smart controllers to try and help with that. We do have a housing shortage. So we're trying to balance the need for people to live and want to be in the community with the amount of water use that we can allow right now during this temporary conservation time. State law is now required as of this last legislative session that we meter every single connection in the city by 2029 for secondary water. That will be a huge asset to be able to help manage and help people understand the water needs that they have. And then ultimately, we do have property owners that have the right to develop the property based on the general plan. And if they meet the requirements by providing water through the various different sources that are out there, then as the council, you guys make the decision as to how that is allowed to occur. I think the real key here is that everybody's doing our part. We delivered 4.1 billion gallons of water last year during the drought. We anticipate that we'll be able to do that again. We're watching closely with all of the water resources that are out there as we've seen the runoffs come off the mountains. We're evaluating those with our partners at Weber Basin and all of the secondary water systems to see what we can do to try and make this water last and then pray for more water next year. I mean, that's we got to play the hand we're dealt, I guess is the easiest way to say it. So I'll turn it back to Tracy to talk a little bit more about the financial projections.
So on the financial side, are there any questions to this point, council? We'll just continue until we do the public hearing. So as part of the master plan, there was a financial coverage projection, and you can see here that, at the time that the master plan was adopted, our rates were bringing in an amount of revenue equal to this gray line. And you can see that operations, maintenance, and capital project needs far exceeded that. And that was the reason for those original rate increases. And as we come to you as part of this budget with a proposal to increase rates, that's the same situation that we're in. We have a need to maintain the system, maintain sufficient revenues for operations to cover our costs. We have inflating costs at fairly extreme levels, and we have conservation, right? As we look forward in the models, I wouldn't anticipate, I think that as people learn that they can use less water, I don't think they're going to go back to where they were. I mean, they'll come back, as the gentleman mentioned earlier, they're going to put an amount that their landscape needs, but they're not going to use excessive amounts because they realize that they don't need to. And all of those things, but more particularly the cost increases, lead us to the determination that we need a rate increase. So as we look at these rates that are proposed, it's proposed to take, when we talk about a meter size that's up to 3/4 of an inch, that pretty much encompasses all residential users. There are a few residential users that have a meter a little bit larger than that. But as we look at meters from 1 inch to 8 inches, those are commercial, schools, and manufacturing industrial. 8-inch is obviously the manufacturing industrial and so forth. But in all of those categories, so everyone is affected, not just residential users, the base rate is going up. For residential users, from $20.80 to $23.90, and an equivalent percentage increase for all other meter sizes as far as base rate is concerned. When we talk about excess consumption, so if you have access to secondary water, then it's assumed that you will use the secondary water because, for outdoor landscapes, that's the appropriate use. And so there's a different excess consumption rate scale for those people versus those without access to secondary water. And so we can see that in the first tier, that goes from $1.85 to $2.13. In the second tier, for those with access to secondary water, it was proposed to increase that a little bit more because when we ran the numbers, it would appear that most people with access to secondary water actually stay within the base amount from 0 to 6,000. There's really not much of a need to go above that. And so that tier is a little more punitive, I guess we could use the word. I don't know if that's the appropriate word or not, but it's meant to force people to conserve at that level. The same thing happens with those without access to secondary water. In these first two tiers are up to 45,000 gallons. The increase is at one level from $1.85 to $2.13 and $2.31 to $2.66. In these top two levels from 46,000 and above, the percentage increase is higher. And again, that's meant to keep people or to help people to conserve based on the rates. And just to review, a couple of meetings ago, we talked all about that conservation and how it's affected the tiers and were these rates that were established affecting that. And they've had a great effect on that. People have recognized that they don't need as much water. They're more conscientious of how much they're using. And a lot of that has to do with how much they have to pay for the water. Commercial churches and schools, which have separate rate categories, their excess usages are also increasing from 205 to 236 and 228 to 262. At least that's what's being proposed as part of this budget. So how do we compare to those around us? Because in my office in finance, we also handle utility billing, and we receive a lot of calls, and maybe you have, that we are the most expensive. We have the highest rates anywhere, basically. I've heard that to around here to the neighboring cities. So I went out and looked at that, and if we compare the base rates and excess charges up to 10,000 gallons, because our base rate for someone that does not have access to secondary water, they're allowed 10,000 gallons. So I wanted to compare apples to apples. We fall almost at the bottom. Without this proposed rate increase, we are at the bottom. We're at 2080. The next closest is 2150. Now, our city manager would support this wholly, and he's stated it many times. We don't propose rate increases, and we don't set our rates based on what everyone else is doing. Our city engineers explained that our system is far more complex than most any one of these systems listed here. Orem, Ogden, they have similarly complex systems, but because of a long history of planning and proper budgeting and proper rate increases at the proper time, we're able to maintain some of the lowest rates, not only in Davis County, but throughout all of the areas where cities are similar to our size. And so that's something that actually we could be very proud of, that even with this rate increase, we're still one of the lowest rates in the area. It's also important to note that if you went out on the website, so if some citizens were to do that, the base rate in some of these cities is actually lower than our base rate, but you don't get any water for that base rate. So the new model, which we haven't adopted yet, maybe in our next rate study, maybe we'll stick with this one, but the new model for most of these cities is we charge you a base rate and you get zero water with that base rate. Then we charge you per thousand after that. So that's what I've equated in here is the equivalent of 10,000 gallons across all of these cities. Hopefully that will help people understand where we sit as far as our rate for 10,000 gallons of water. How does that affect the monthly utility rate with this proposed increase? Water would go from $20.80 on a standard 3/4 inch connection for a residential user. It would increase $3.10 to $23.90. So a minimum bill, including all of the different utilities and only one garbage can, would go from $75.50 to $78.60. It may be important to note just briefly in this meeting that there were discussions with Waste Management as well, as their costs have increased significantly across all types of categories, from steel to employees to fuel, in every aspect. And there was potentially a proposal to increase the rate for our refuse service in this year. But as we reviewed, again, with good planning, we feel like we have the sufficient reserves to not increase that rate as well in this current year. And in that way, kind of alleviate some of the rate pressure for the users to not have to increase multiple rates across the schedule. So that's pretty much what I have, what we have, I should say, about water and utility rates. I'll briefly discuss the other item, and that is the proposition to build a 911 dispatch center. Currently, the police department, they've outgrown their current space. They're able to function in it, but it's very tight, especially in the dispatch area, and it's been that way in the dispatch area for some time. There's grant funding available to cover approximately 90% of the cost of this project. There's also impact fees available and money that the city has set aside long ago for a potential public safety building. What the construction of this building does under this situation is it allows us to extend the useful life of the current police facility. It opens up a significant amount of space so that the other police operations can expand into that area, and then it provides a more adequate space for 911 dispatch and records. And the last thing that it does is it helps us avoid, for the time being, and probably for a significant amount of time into the future, bonding and an associated tax increase that would come with a new police facility. So for that reason, I know we've discussed before recommending this project as part of the budget. With that, that's our kind of short presentation. And so I guess I would just recommend that we open a public hearing and take public comment related to the budget.
Very good. Okay, who's going to make that motion?
I move that we open the public hearing to discuss the budget.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, very good. So this is now the time that we'll accept public comments regarding the proposed budget. So if anyone wishes to speak in that, you're welcome to come up to either side of the podium again and state your name.
Did you miss me? No. Dawn Fitzpatrick. I don't envy you. Remember sitting in this position 2 years ago as COVID was hitting, and especially the two new ones, budgets are like freaked out. And so I really kind of feel sorry for you guys to be in this position. So I have mixed feelings about this water bill increase. I want to start out by saying, though, I appreciate my water. And I appreciate it a whole lot more than the amount I almost pay for putting out a half a can full of trash every week to the curb. That's where I think I have a hard time with that one. So 2 years ago we had COVID, and now we're faced with rising inflation. Gas has gone up 52 cents in the last month. A gallon of milk is more than doubled, and so has a dozen eggs in the last year. And we know what's happened to rent and housing costs. I live in a 55-plus community. Most of us, fortunately, are probably under the 6,000, and we are on secondary water, which is helpful. But I do worry about those in some of our areas of the city that are on fixed incomes. Even though $3 and whatever cents isn't a lot, you compound it on everything else that's gone on. I really worry about that. What I worry about is they're going to let their lawns go. And I agree with Mr. Cox. We really enjoy our yards, and the last thing we need to see is just dirt or weeds. I wonder if more emphasis could be put on some of the commercial I do want to do a call out to Safe Harbor. Their new administrative building is 100% xeriscape. There's no grass at all in that facility, and it is wonderful looking. And there needs to be more encouragement immediately with our businesses. I see some businesses currently laying sod in the park strip, no less. What I really didn't fully see it, but Steve has kind of talked about it a little bit, was the increase in conservation. And you know that's my harp number one. I would like to have seen budget in there, specifically line item for some incentives for people to be able to, not just Weber Basin, because some of us aren't customers of Weber Basin. Some of them don't want to follow the guidelines that Weber Basin is requiring, and there are other alternatives to proper landscaping other than what Weber Basin is requiring to make that flip the strip and other areas of grass that are not necessarily in the strip. I would love to have seen money budgeted in there for the city to take out all grass on all their park strips. A lot of cities are doing that. They're at least making that that one. And the other thing I didn't see in there was a budget for enforcement of water violations. And I will raise my hand. I am one that has called the water department multiple times. And we still have an HOA along Layton Parkway that is still watering 3 to 4 times a week. And it's watering the street better than it's watering their bushes. And then as far as the water meters, I'm glad to see that we're just within maybe 7 years of everybody getting metered. But I didn't see anything in there about them being monitored. We can put them in, but unless they're monitored and some access for homeowners to have access to that information is needed. I live in an area that has secondary water with no meters. And we're in a guess, and we've lost a lot of property and a lot of trees and a lot of grass last year trying to play the game of are we watering enough, but we don't know because we simply don't know what we're doing. I know that the city received millions of dollars from COVID money that could have gone into infrastructure. And so I would hope that they could look at using some of that money for some of these improvements, which are desperately needed, and looking at some newly generated funds to increase some kind of fund for conservation. And the only other thing I have to say is I'm glad to see the employees have a market-based wage increase, or some of them do. But I'm hoping too that, and I didn't look real hard, but that one of my last things on the council was to provide the council with a market-based wage salary for our mayor. And I hope that that has been considered and been added into this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the topic?
Sorry, council, to beat this dead water horse again. Just a couple of questions, though, that I have. And it kind of relates around, and it's water, of course, with me, but there's guidelines that have been posted by Weber Basin and Layton City, and I think they're basically mirror images of one another. Is that right? Mm-hmm. My question would be, where did they come up with this so-called, these guidelines? You know, from my knowledge with Weber Basin, they haven't contacted anybody in the professional as far as, you know, the nursery, Utah Nursery Landscape Association, Utah State University, you know, the professionals. They haven't incorporated their opinions or their knowledge into these standards whatsoever, you know. And I'm going from my 45 years of doing this, but I can tell you that in certain soil conditions, you know, this baseline that they've established is not going to even keep certain landscapes alive. Turf, for one thing, needs a minimum of a ½ an inch per week during the summer months. It'll go dormant and it won't look very good, but it will come back if it gets the ½ an inch. Depends on your sprinkler system, I guess. But as far as, you know, 20 minutes for a pop-up and a mist or a spray type system, you're probably pretty close to a ½ an inch. 40 minutes for an impact head, you're not getting close to a ½ an inch. And 1 hour on a drip system that is maintained, the drippers on a drip system, the standard ones, are 1 gallon per hour is all. Okay, so you're not going to keep trees or shrubs alive in Utah in the summer months with that. You're not even going to keep a lot of the perennials alive in Utah with that. So my recommendation is if they're going to start to set down these baselines, why don't they incorporate the decades of professional and scientific evidence, or people with the scientific knowledge out there? Why can't they be incorporated into this so that we can sustain some of our landscapes? Like I said, I asked you before, put the value on your landscape in your backyard. Do you want it to see brown weeds, trees die, shrubs die? It's a big investment, and then it's a huge sacrifice to what we enjoy, you know, as residents of Utah. And then one other quick question I just have, as the statistics were up here and we're talking about that we're gaining, I guess, if we have residential development on farm ground, the residential development uses less water per year than agriculture. Is that what I read up there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right?
Pretty much.
So what is that ratio? I know that somewhat depends on the density of the housing, but is it 2 to 1? I mean, what is that ratio that we're gaining? Residential development versus agriculture on a piece of ground.
So right now, the duty on a piece of ground is 3 acre-feet per acre. When we do the calculations for what a residential development requires, we exact a water duty of 3 acre-feet per acre, but we remove the hardscape portions of that. And so we see oftentimes a 75% reduction due to the streets that are put in and things like that. Or excuse me, we see about a 25% reduction over that 3 acre-feet because we remove all that hardscape from there. So.
Okay, makes sense. One other question for the mayor and for the council. Now, a lot of other cities, municipalities in water districts are contemplating and working up ordinances at this point right now as we speak to limit the amount of turf or sod in a landscape. Because that's something that's been considered here by Layton City. And if so, where are you at on that? Because I'm a believer that turf and sod, yes, a little bit of it, some of it's nice to have, and every yard should have some. The kids need somewhere to play. But tends to be that most people in Utah, you know, use turf or sod as, in the past, a cheap and easy ground cover. And that's basically, and they want it to look green. So is that something that Layton City is contemplating at this point as far as putting some restrictions on the available footprint that's left after home and hardscape has been installed?
So we passed an ordinance last year, and Councilmember Fitzpatrick was on the council at the time, and we really focused hard on making sure that we put in some guidelines and some restrictions, but at the same time, we do not want to eliminate turf.
Okay. And that is on residential as well as commercial?
Correct.
Okay, good to know. Well, like I say, there are cities moving in that direction because, you know, we're living in probably the fastest growing state in the United States, or one of them right now. We definitely have a limited amount of water, and some things have got to change. You know, old timers like me, you know, we've got to get beyond these big, expansive green lawns. You know, there just isn't going to be the water to do it, especially if the state continues to grow the way it does. Thank you once again for your time. Appreciate it.
I also want to acknowledge we have our Planning Commission chair here, Brett. Thank you. I know a lot of the planning commissioners spent a lot of time on this ordinance as well, and I want to say thanks for all their time in making sure we pass what we felt like was the right guidance at the time. So. Councilman Roberts, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just a thought. Mr. Cox and former council member Fitzpatrick brought up the Open Doors building on Layton Parkway across from the hospital. And that was kind of what I envisioned when we were talking about the new landscape ordinance. Was we're not just throwing out a bunch of gravel. It's some beautiful native plants, water-wise plants, perennials, I would say. So I think that's the vision. And I thought there was reduction in percentage of turfs in front of buildings as well in that. So yeah, I think I don't think these are good discussions that have been happening, and I appreciate your comments, Preston.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak regarding our budget proposed items tonight? If not, council, I'll turn it back over to you to take some action regarding, first off, we need to close our public hearing. And we do have an option to leave it open if we choose. If you want to leave it open till the next scheduled council meeting, because at that point we would need to close it and then adopt the budget, but you have that option, you have that choice tonight.
Madam Mayor, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
From Tracy's presentation and Steve's? Thank you. Thanks for digging into the numbers and presenting it in a way that's the big picture. So I appreciate all the efforts of the staff in preparing us. We've been working on this we have since March.
Mm-hmm.
The staff has since December. I don't know, a long time. Just something that we have to do every year. Just a clarification from 2 councils ago, where the water rate increase was from the rate study was adopted, that we needed to have 3 increases, the 35%, and then the 20%, and then the subsequent 10%. And there was a council change between those 2, between 2018 and 2019. And 35% was done and the 20% was done. And after each of those years, you looked at it. You say, all right, where are we? And this model was done with consultants and professional modeling, and we were in line. Well, when we, in 2020, excuse me,
yeah,
we did the same thing. We asked for that information because that's what we do. And it showed that the model had overproduced some revenue. And we felt as a council at that time, and we voted, I think the vote was 4-1, not to move ahead with the increase, because we felt that we were looking at the numbers and it didn't show that we weren't behind. The model was, and so I just wanted to make that clear that in 2021, yes, the pandemic was on us. We didn't do it. We didn't feel like it was the right time, the right thing to do. But in 2020, we wanted to make sure that we're watching the numbers, and if we need it, we need it. If we don't need it, we don't need it. And so that's just my only clarification from the presentation. Other than that, thank you, spot on, and I appreciate the support from the staff.
Yeah, just to echo Councilman Morris's thoughts, because Councilman Thomas and myself and Councilman Morris were on the council at the time, and we would never raise a rate unless we felt it was necessary, and the staff wouldn't recommend that either. And we feel like this is the best route for us to go. Speaking to Don knows that I care a lot about the fixed income folks in our communities, and that's why we wanted to get ahead of this on the water rates, to get the word out so that people could see what it is we were proposing, and before it gets too warm and before the water starts to be used in the summer months, that they can potentially make some changes, and then we can make sure that we give them advanced notice of that. Additionally, the rate structures that were implemented by state law a little while ago have done a great job of getting people into what I consider reasonable water usage. In fact, and Tracy could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe 95% of all of residential users are in what we consider the non-punitive rate structures, and they've done that either on their own or because they've wanted to make changes. And we are not trying to punish anybody for reasonable water usage. And so the fact that we have 95% of our users in what we consider reasonable water usage rates, that's where we want people to be. And last year we conserved 680 million gallons of water just from conservation. That's a hefty bit of water. And that's all thanks to the citizens in making decisions and trying to do their best to be good neighbors to each other. So we hope that we can continue to be in front of this project, this problem, and hopefully we can get some rain, as Steve mentioned. But the fact that 75% of water usage is from outdoor usage, that's where we want people to look at what they can do to curtail while we're in this exceptional drought. So I appreciate the staff and all the hard work they've done on this, and for all the information that Tracy and Steve have provided so that we could make a good decision. And I know I'm sure I can speak for all the mayor and the council that we're all available and ready to answer any questions and to listen to your concerns and to hear what ideas you might have, because we represent you. And so that's the whole purpose of this public hearing, is that we want to hear from you. And if you don't feel comfortable coming up to the microphone or being here in person, I hope you reach out to me or one of the other members of the council or the mayor and make sure that we hear what you have to say.
Any other comments?
Just one clarifying question and then a comment. The slide, Tracy, you put up a slide that said public comment would be taken until the 15th. I understand that'll be until the 16th. Is that correct? Correct. So that this public comment will be gathered, and we'll have an open public hearing when we adopt the budget as well. So until our next meeting. But I mentioned it in the work meeting. I sometimes have to stick up for agriculture. And, Steve talked about the $250 million that the legislature put towards secondary metering. They also put $70 million towards ag water optimization. And that's a match, meaning the farmer will put in a certain amount of money and receive the equal amount of money. So that's $140 million of impact in optimizing how agriculture water is used and being more conservative with the agriculture water. So really across the board, we're trying to use water more wisely and make a beautiful, place to live, as well as provide the food and fiber that we need to survive as well.
Very good.
I feel the council has spoken so well about all of this already, but I just want to make sure that residents know that we're trying to mitigate as much as possible to make sure that we still have the water that we need, and that indoor use is most critical. And that's something that we want to make sure is available. And so all of these, the rate increase and the projects that you saw, we hear you. We're doing what we can to try and make the system the best for all of the city. We live here also, so we're not trying to impose anything on you that we're not going to be partaking in as well. But we hear you and we want your ideas. And so please continue to share your thoughts and make sure that you let us know. As Councilmember Bloxham mentioned, we would not do anything to raise rates if we didn't feel it was absolutely necessary, but we are completely open to suggestions, ideas, all of those things. So thank you for all that you've been sharing with us already. We appreciate that.
Okay. Do you want to comment, or are you good? I got the look. He's good. I'll just make one quick comment. And again, thank you out to all of our residents. I mean, they have been very conscious as far as the usage of water. And as stated earlier, the amount that we've been able to conserve. And I don't know about you, but myself, going through that process last year has certainly made me aware. And it's funny because now the simplest little things, whether I go to turn on the tap to wash my hands, I no longer turn it all the way on. I get the dribble out and kind of just do the bare necessities, because I know every little drop's going to help. And I hope that all of us will continue to do that and have that in the forefront of your minds as we work through these next few months, because they are going to be challenging. But again, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the input here. And yes, you can see by tonight that we definitely wanted to kind of help educate everyone so they know why we take what action we do. And it's, you've elected us to be in these positions to be responsible and to be good fiduciary, responsible people on your behalf. So again, we'll keep it sounds like we're keeping our public hearing open, which is wise. But Council, I'll bring it back to you again for some action. I need somebody to make a motion, in other words. You can keep it open until the next meeting, yeah.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we leave the public hearing open until our next meeting on June 16th and adjourn.
Second. Okay. I do not have to do a roll call on that, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for attending your city council meeting tonight.